across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
And good afternoon. Yes, welcome to the home of common sense. Thank you to Julia. She's back, of course, tomorrow at 10 o'clock. Coming up this afternoon, Australia's Prime Minister says the Bondi Beach gunmen were more likely motivated by Islamic State ideology, amid mounting questions over their access to firearms and whether the attack could have been foiled. The father and son accused of killing 15 at a Jewish celebration, of course, on Sunday. ISIS flag, improvised explosives, all reportedly found in the car after the shooting. But don't worry, everybody, because diversity is our strength. We'll come to that point in just a second. Also this afternoon, Donald Trump has filed a £10 billion lawsuit against the BBC, alleging they literally put false words in his mouth. He's suing for defamation under Florida's Deceptive and Unfair Trade Practices Act. He's also suggested the BBC may have used AI or something to fabricate statements. More on that story too. And redundancies have jumped to 156,000 in the 3 months to October. That is the highest in almost 5 years, excluding the pandemic since 2012. Businesses were unsettled by uncertainty over how Rachel Reeves might raise taxes in the budget last month. It's an absolute fog of misery out there financially, and there's no predictions to suggest it's going to get any better anytime soon. Everything you need to know, all the breaking news right here on Talk 0344 499 1000. And it appears we have now got a sentence handed out to the Liverpool driver. This was Liverpool Crown Court, has just been sentenced to 21 years in jail. 21 years in jail. Paul Doyle used his car as a weapon and was in a rage when he deliberately drove into football fans. I have to say, that is absolutely right. It's a lengthy prison sentence, and if anyone's ever seen any of the footage, including the dash cam audio and everything that goes with it, it is, I don't know whether to use the word horrific and troubling. It's everything you can imagine. But part of me wondered that given the way the law works, and you can only sentence on certain specified crimes you've been charged with, and he wasn't charged with murder or manslaughter, I thought maybe it's going to be less than that. It's actually 21 and a half years. That is a substantial sentence. Is that justice as you see it? We'll have more on that story shortly. And this, diversity is our strength. How many times have you heard that? Diversity is our strength. I mean, I don't even know what it's meant to mean now. Sunday morning, of course, as the news broke of that mass shooting in Australia, I was about to say a lone voice. I don't know if she is a lone voice. Her name is Lola McAvoy. She's a Labour MP for Darlington. She was asked to comment on this. She was doing a live TV interview. She was asked to comment on what was happening on Bondi Beach, the mass slaughter of Jewish people who were celebrating a festival on that day. And she began by saying that at such an early stage, she said, I don't want to speculate on what the factors are that have contributed to this awful tragedy. But then for reasons that nobody can quite work out, she then launched into a sermon about the importance of celebrating diversity. She said, I firmly believe people are good, she said, and that given the opportunity, they will look out for each other. And I just want to say that as much as possible, we should try and detoxify the way we think about people who aren't like us, because our diversity in this country, here it comes, is our strength. So in the midst of that, we should try and detoxify the way we think about people who aren't like us. What, like the father and son with the guns, like all the other terror attacks that have happened around the world. Diversity is our strength. It's a wholly meaningless phrase, a great slogan maybe for a supermarket boasting of its variety of choice in the fruit and veg department. From cucumbers to kumquats, diversity is our strength. You know, that might work, sort of, but it's an utterly stupid way to describe the human race when it comes to different groups or cultures getting along together. It's merely It's an aspirational desire on the to-do list of lefties who feel so much better with the notion that culture, common standards and a spiritual template are completely identical across the entire planet. We know this is not the case. Some of these things are uncomfortable for many people. At the weekend, we saw what happened on Bondi Beach in our own country, Manchester Arena, the Manchester Synagogue, 7-7, London Bridge, Borough Market, Lee Rigby, Westminster Bridge. I mean, the list goes on. These are the ones that actually happened, not to mention the many that were thwarted in that same time period. If we go across the Western globe, that picture is off the scale. But remember, diversity is our strength. When it comes to living in a society that has people from all manner of backgrounds, different religions, different colours, different languages, ethnicities, that's a completely different thing. In this country, we have Nigerian doctors, we have Indian entrepreneurs, we have Polish architects, Chinese tech geniuses. And all of that is brilliant. And our strengths are actually employing and hiring brilliant people. The strength of those inclusions is nothing to do with the colour of someone's skin or their religion. It's an utterly preposterous position to take. But it doesn't stop politicians from all over the planet uttering this same daft line.
Our diversity is our greatest strength.
We believe our diversity, our differences, when joined together by a common set of ideals, makes us stronger.
One of our strengths is our diversity.
Diversity is our strength and our unity is our power as a nation.
Cultures coming together are a wonderful thing. Our multilingual, multi-ethnic, diverse society is a strength, not a weakness.
Yeah, they kind of love that line. You had Sadiq Khan there, even the King was in there, Obama, that woman that didn't beat Trump, Kamala Harris, and of course Jeremy Corbyn at the end. Diversity is our strength. Can I just throw that out to you? I want your sort of overarching comments on this. 0344 499 1000. Is diversity our strength? I just think it's just the wrong phrase for what somebody is trying to achieve, other than making certain individuals, and we saw a montage of them there, feel better about themselves. I can't really think of any other reason. Let's speak to Dave Wooding, columnist at The Sun, political journalist of many years. Dave, good afternoon to you.
Afternoon, Ian.
How many times have we had to quote a politician where they've come out with that one? Diversity is our strength. I mean, it's the way I see it is, at best, it's sort of a neutral position, diversity. There's nothing wrong with diversity, but the idea that it makes us stronger, that's the bit that I can't get my head around, Dave.
Yes, it's almost as if politicians are afraid to be insulting murderers. They want to say a bland, insipid response to the horrors we've seen in Sydney. I mean, you only need to look on social media this morning and see some of the MPs saying how awful it was, not once mentioning the fact that it was the slaughter of 15 innocent Jews, or that it was carried out by a man with hatred in his heart, or men with hatred in their hearts, and following some crazy distortion of the Islamic faith. It's bizarre. And is it because they are afraid of losing the Muslim vote in this country, because it is a bigger vote than the Jewish vote now? Or are they? Why do they have to tread this line? Why can't they just call it for what it is? And I'd go even further than that, Ian, and I'd say that the atrocities we've seen, which you listed, which were quite shocking when you list them in the way you just did, you know, the Manchester Synagogue and all the other incidents before. This has been coming a long time, because we have just tolerated the anti-Semitism which has been festering beneath our very noses, and that's all down to gutless politicians and woke police chiefs who just won't grasp the nettle and say this is wrong. We allow people to march the streets calling for the globalization of Intifada. I saw people arguing on social media this morning over what it means. It's quite simple what it means. It means murder Jews wherever they are. And the 16 million Jews in this country now must wonder where they are safe. They're not safe in their own synagogues. They're not safe at the other side of the world, in a country which doesn't seem, which has got its own problems now with Islamism. So yes, it's we really need to crack down on this. And the only person who seems to have stood up to them was this brave fellow, the shopkeeper Ahmed Al Ahmed, who went out and tackled.
Yeah, tried to jump on one and for that period, de-armed the. Is that the correct phrase? De-armed the man, which was, I mean, that was incredible in itself. But I do wonder, Dave. We talk about this kind of curious. Almost cliche of diversity is our strength. It's also, I'd argue, it's kind of dangerous as well to kind of every time something happens that you just throw that line in. I mentioned the Labour MP for Darlington, who, literally hours after this had happened, went straight into a rant on live television about how diversity is our strength and, refusing to call out the blinding obvious, refusing to call out that there are some people who live among us where there is no strength in diversity. In fact, their version of diversity is not a strength, it's our enemy.
Yeah, and Lola McAvoy's comments were a great example of the pussyfooting around the issue that we see. Yeah. People out there are angry. People all over the world are angry about this, and yet our politicians don't seem to be sharing that anger. People will be sick of hearing them saying how awful it was, and we stand united with them, but they won't call it out for what it is. And it's time that. Like that brave soul in Sydney at Bondi Beach who risked his life, it's time that our politicians and our police chiefs stood up to this and did something about it. Yeah. Because this evil ideology will destroy us unless we destroy it.
Correct. We're going to be taking calls on that. Is diversity really our strength? 0344 499 1000. Dave, as we came on air, the sentencing was taking place of Paul Doyle. This is the man guilty of 31 offences, of which he pleaded guilty to. Liverpool Crown Court, of course, were hearing the horrendous evidence of the 134 people injured at that Liverpool FC parade. This is your city. It's your football club as well, Dave. And, of course, this was horrific. And, we started to wonder, as this case developed, was this a man unaware of what he was doing? Was he out of control? Was some kind of blackout almost happen? But it appears, certainly looking at the footage and the comments of the sentencing judge, that might not have been the case, because he's there heard shouting, effing and swearing, "Get out the way," as he ploughs through a crowd of people. Today he was jailed for 21 and a half months. It is a substantial prison sentence, but it's so horrific, but simultaneously an utterly sort of bizarre story in that respect.
Yes, I was a few streets away from that incident on the day with my son and his friend, because we'd gone up to see the parade. Obviously, we weren't in the thick of the horror that happened, but word reached us very quickly, and we were debating what was the cause of it. He must have been drunk. He must have been high on drugs. Yeah. Was it a terrorist? Even half jokingly, some people started asking what football team he may have been supporting. But we find out it was just road rage on a monstrous scale. Yeah. This man is obviously got a history of anger. I think it was in 1994 he was convicted of biting off somebody's ear in a fight. And he seems to have had other instances.
Yeah, discharged from the Royal Marines as well, where he served 22 months in the Royal Marines, during which he punched another person in the face several times. So it's interesting, isn't it? And you know this from covering news stories over the years, Dave. It's only when you start to hear that, and I'm sure we'll hear more about his domestic setup and goodness knows what else over the ensuing months. I did say a second ago 21 and a half months, 21 and a half years he's been sentenced to. I mean, that is a substantial prison, because curiously, it's one of those offences where, as serious and as awful and life-changing for many people as this was, he wasn't actually guilty, he wasn't being charged with murder or manslaughter. So you sort of wonder, is this going to be one of those weird cases that is so abhorrent and horrific, but curiously doesn't actually carry a long prison sentence, because judges can only go by the guidelines? That appears not to be the case, because 21 and a half years in jail is the kind of sentence you might get for murder.
Yes, the appalling irony of this was that Doyle was doing a good turn. He'd gone into town he dropped off some friends who were going to the parade and had gone in to pick them up. Now, who in Liverpool or anywhere else in the country, for that matter, on that day would think that it was easy to drive into the centre of Liverpool city centre when the champions were parading their trophy? Madness. Yeah, he tried to do it and then somehow became enraged when he realised he couldn't drive the car where he wanted to. It's absolutely appalling. And if he knew he had anger issues, why on earth did he attempt to drive through there? Well, of course, he's regretting it now, and he can regret it at his leisure in a cell. I mean, the people who suffered on that day, some of them with appalling injuries, but even those who didn't, we heard in court of young children who are having nightmares. They can't sleep at night because of what they witnessed.
Of course.
And it must have been a truly appalling day.
Indeed. We'll take some response on that story as well. 0344 499 1000. Is that justice, as you see it, on that case in Liverpool? Dave, stay with us. We're back with more comment in a few moments' time. We'll talk about the doctors' strike, of course, set to go ahead. That starts tomorrow. And Donald Trump suing the BBC for $10 billion. Has he got any chance of trousering any kind of return out of this legal case? Details to come. Our lines are open. This is Talk. The Talk app. You can watch, catch up and listen to all your favourite shows and podcasts anytime, anywhere, all on the Talk app. Watching and listening to Talk just got easier. There's now only one place for the home of common sense. So head over to your App Store or Google Play and search Talk now.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Diversity is our strength. Keep hearing politicians say that, even against the backdrop of a horrendous terror attack that murdered 15 people on a beach on a sunny day, celebrating the festival of their own faith, and God knows how many injured as well in that equation. Of course, I'm thinking about, as I say this, that I don't know how many more around the world of a similar nature. Those that were thwarted are still included in this list. And yet we'll have a politician pitch up right after it happens saying, yep, I mean, we must remember diversity is our strength. You think, well, I don't think that quite works in this context. Dave Wooding is with us. We're looking at the big stories of the day. Let's move on then, Dave, to the doctors' strike. Experts are warning that resident doctors will risk lives, abandon patients when they strike from 7 o'clock tomorrow morning. This is despite, of course, one of the worst cases of flu for the NHS. The Health Secretary says medics have picked the moment of maximum danger after overwhelmingly rejecting his last-ditch offer. Let's have a listen.
I think it's now clear that what these strikes are really about is the BMA's totally unrealistic demand for another 26% on top of the 28.9% pay rise they've already had. Not only do I think that is unreasonable and obviously unaffordable, I offered to postpone these strikes, to reschedule them for January because of the enormous risks to patients and the NHS.
Wes Streeting speaking to ITV News. Dave, I mean, look, it almost doesn't matter what Wes Streeting says, and I don't think it matters what individual doctors say. Their union is a pretty robust outfit. It almost defies the reality that it's a medical union. You'd think it was some kind of like Polish steelworkers outfit from the 1980s with Lech Wałęsa or something in charge of the thing, because they seem to function on a very similar way.
Absolutely, and they are effectively holding not only the NHS but patients to ransom in this demand for what is really a fantasy pay rise for most of us. You know, the fact that they've just come away with nearly 29% in over 2 years, and they're after another 26% already, defies logic. Yet it's not just the BMA itself; it's the doctors, the junior doctors, who 83% of them voted to reject the latest offer and to have this strike. So of course there is clearly a deep militancy within that group, and the problem we have is waiting lists are rocketing. There was a story a couple of days ago about surgeons only doing one operation a day in many cases because there aren't the support staff around, that there isn't the capability or the operating theatres available for them to do it, and they're walking in there and they can't get anything done. Now we've got doctors going on strike. There's 2,500 people a day being admitted to hospital because of the flu outbreak, and there's something like 13,000 people in hospital who won't be allowed to get out for Christmas because they need these doctors to do those checks and sign them off in order to release them. So this is adding to the problems the NHS has already got.
Yeah, and of course the idea that you have, well, I'm just trying to think of the right word, that agency doctors, that's the word I couldn't find there. Agency doctors who come in to cover. It's never going to be full cover, is it? It's all very well saying, well, don't worry, you know, there's nothing, everything's sort of, it might be very costly, but everything's covered. I don't believe that is the case, that everything is covered.
No, and you know, the point is all of being a doctor, going into the medical profession, is to help people and to cure people and make them well. And they just seem to be doing the complete opposite here at the worst possible time of year. How many strikes have we had over the last 3 or 4 years? About 15 or 16 of them. Yeah. It's not stopped. I think it's shocking. And the thing is that when you speak to patients about nurses or doctors seeking more money, they always say, "Oh, they're not paid enough. Give them more money." Because, of course, if you're in hospital feeling unwell and you're having treatment, you put your faith in the medical people.
Of course you do.
And, you know, you're very vulnerable, and so you're always going to support them. But the reality is, when you're when you're fit and well and outside in the greater world, and you look in on that, you think this really is preying on innocent people, in my view.
Yeah, completely. Well, we'll see how that pans out. And, of course, the sort of tangible effects, particularly with this flu season being particularly bad, what that means in reality over the next 5 days. Let's look at this story as well, Dave. Donald Trump filing a $10 billion lawsuit against the BBC, alleging it put false words in his mouth. This was referenced, of course, January the 6th. He's suing for defamation under Florida's deceptive and unfair trade practices, seeking £5 billion on each count. $5 billion on each count, suggested the BBC may have used AI or something to fabricate his statements. Let's have a listen to
in a little while you'll be seeing I'm suing the BBC for putting words in my mouth. Literally, they put words in my mouth. They had me saying things that I never said coming out. I guess they used AI or something. So we'll be bringing that lawsuit. A lot of people are asking, when are you bringing that lawsuit? Even the media can't believe that one. They actually put terrible words in my mouth having to do with January 6th that I didn't say. And the beautiful words that I said, right? The beautiful words, talking about patriotism and all of the good things that I said, they didn't say that, but they put terrible words. They actually have me speaking with words that I never said, and they got caught because I believe somebody at BBC said, this is so bad, it has to be reported. That's called fake news. So we'll be filing that suit probably this afternoon or tomorrow.
Yeah. They're beautiful words. Beautiful, beautiful words. The best words ever.
Fake news.
Yeah, apparently. Dave, what are we making of this? He's not going to get $10 billion, is he?
No, but I mean, it's a bit easier to get big money in the American courts.
True.
I mean, he's already sued ABC for the equivalent of £11 million for accusing him of being a rapist. I think there was another one which is a bit more like this with the CBS, where he got £12 million because he claimed they doctored some video of Kamala Harris to make her look better than she was.
Oh, it was awful. It was dreadful, that one. Yeah. I mean, that was very clear-cut.
So yes, the BBC should be quaking in the boots, but not really the BBC. The two people at the top have resigned over this. It should be us. It should be me, you, and all.
Well, that's why I don't. Yeah, I don't. I mean, it was arguably one of the worst things I've ever seen in terms of monkeying around with footage, particularly since look, if that documentary had set out, I know this is going over old ground now, if they wanted to set out and create the argument that Donald Trump, tacitly or otherwise, kind of encouraged a pylon on January the 6th. They didn't need to do that montage. They could have let it speak for itself, and then people could have decided whether his words were just simply patriotic and encouraging to those who felt that there was an injustice with an election, or whether they were dead. They could have just left it at that, let it breathe, let it do its own thing. But to compile this concoction of absolute lies, because it was, with events and words that were said almost an hour apart, was outrageous. Having said that, it's our money, Dave, as you rightly say, so we will have to pay this. So I don't want him to win on that basis alone, because me old Nan wants to put her heating on this winter and can't afford 10 billion quid.
Yes, and already lots of people are saying they're not going to pay their licence fee. There's more defiance of that fee.
Yeah.
Never. I have to say I pay mine. I think perhaps for all the quality stuff you get out of the BBC, it's worth it. But if you start looking at the mistakes and the biased reporting that they're accused of, then that does make you wonder whether it's worth it, because there are so many other outlets for news and high-quality drama these days that the whole model is under threat. Yeah. And this will just add to that.
Completely. Dave, we hit the clock. Great to have you on as ever. Thank you. We will speak very soon. Dave Wooding, Sun columnist, legendary political journalist. Are you with Donald Trump on this one?
Listen, you're being rude. You're fake news. You're fake news. Stop being rude.
No,
you're fake news.
Not fake news. Nothing rude about this. This is simply asking the question, Donny. Is it right we give the man $10 billion? It's a lot of money. It was a stitch-up. It was literally a faked-up set of words It wasn't explicitly a montage, and that's the crazy thing about it. I could bang on about this forever. They could have easily addressed it by putting a little flash or a jump in between each piece to say, this is some of the things he said on that day, and it would have been fine, but they didn't. That sounds to anyone listening or watching it like one complete sentence, you know, get out there and fight. Encouraging violence. Now, some will argue, well, he kind of was still encouraging, you know, a bit of a pile-on. What do you think was going to happen? That doesn't matter whether you think that or not. This was a stitch-up, but should the BBC be giving him $10 billion? It's a lot of money. I wonder how many people in Florida did actually watch it. That's what the BBC lawyers will be trying to establish. 0344 499 1000. We'll take your calls on that. Your response as well to the sentencing of Paul Doyle. Liverpool Crown Court was the scene. Half an hour ago, he was sentenced to 21.5 years in jail for ploughing his car through crowds after the Liverpool Football Club celebrations. It's a substantial prison sentence. Is that about right, do you sense? And diversity is our strength. Whenever there's a terror attack somewhere and somebody who is a demonstrable proof that diversity is not our strength, a politician always wheels it out. Let's not get carried away. Diversity is our strength. Not really, mate. Doesn't mean anything, though. If you analyse it, it doesn't really mean anything at all. It's a platitude designed to make people, mostly on the left, feel good about themselves. And that's kind of all it is. 0344 499 1000.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
David says diversity is good when or if it adds value and interest to our lives, but sprinkle on a dose of religious fanaticism or Islam, and or Islamism, I think, to be absolutely accurate, I'm told. It's a disaster waiting to happen. Well, I keep coming back to the same point, that it's just really a boring cliche. It's a vacuous platitude that would be best used as a slogan in the fruit and veg department of a supermarket, where they could really say, look at what we've got here. Diversity is our strength. From cucumbers to kumquats. You can almost hear the ad playing out for the festive season. When you try to use it to describe the I mean, it just seems like a lot of old hogwash to me. And of course, this comes after the Bondi Beach atrocity. Bland platitudes will not cut it. Public figures must clearly condemn anti-Semitism and Islamist terror. Hours after the attack, Oxford University students and your party activists marched in Oxford city centre, chanting, "Long live the Intifada." Yeah, they did it at a rally supporting 8 hunger strikers affiliated with Palestine. So, diversity is our strength. What sort of diversity are these people looking for? Philip Kisley is Senior Fellow at the New Culture Forum. Philip, always good to gauge your views on this thing. It took about 5 minutes before a Labour MP pitched up and decided to use the diversity is our strength line. I don't know whether it's sort of just a go-to line, sort of Pavlovian instinct that just happens when these things take place, or whether they really believe it. I can't work out what it even means, diversity is our strength.
Hi, Ian. First of all, it's great to see you. I don't think it means anything. I think the opposite is true. Diversity is certainly our challenge. And we're not really looking at diversity here, are we? We're looking at a kind of a development which is a change, which isn't about different kinds of people and different kinds of ideas and different kinds of cultures. It's about one very specific belligerent culture. You've already mentioned the word Islamism. On Saturday, we had people marching with Intifada revolution is the only solution, a banner at the front of their march. Now, the only solution, the solution to what? Yeah. Jews, the West, Britain, people you don't like? That's what multiculturalism means now. When we get these, as you say, ridiculous platitudes, but I think they're worse than that. I think they're Orwellian. They absolutely mean the opposite. It seems that now we're having to deal with Islamophobia definitions straight away. This is the news at the moment, isn't it? The new Islamophobia law, the new definition of Islamophobia. Immediately we're dealing with Islamophobia when 1 in 5 people in this country is anti-Semitic. When Jews, I know for a fact, because I've got plenty of Jewish friends and I've got Jewish loved ones. Many Jews are frightened of walking the streets. If people stand up to this kind of extremism and sectarianism, they are openly attacked or they are threatened. I've got friends, very close friends, Jewish friends, who the police have to watch their house because they've been doxxed and they've been threatened. This is the kind of world we are living in. So I think multiculturalism now, the synonym for multiculturalism is probably Jew hate, because we are not talking about what we thought multiculturalism was 30 years ago. It was never going to work. They were never going to assimilate. Yeah. It's always, sorry to finish a very long point.
Not
here.
At all.
But I think it's important. It's always the most belligerent culture. When we have asymmetric multiculturalism, in other words, where some cultures are privileged much more than others, and the host culture is always denigrated and problematized.
You're right, you identified at the beginning there, Philip, some of those protests, and of course we saw this, and I think they still go on to some extent, but we had it week on, week out, with thousands of people marching in the streets, carrying all manner of horrendous slogans on banners and chanting things. And, you know, River to the Sea was about the tamest that you could mention. Other things too. And nothing very much happened about that. You know, we had a school teacher in Batley that literally has had to change his identity because some parents got the hump because he didn't adhere to their sort of medieval way of applying discourse and debate. We've had it in so many different areas. The kid at school who scuffed a Quran, and then we had that awful scene of a press conference, which, if you remember, Philip, included a police officer, a councillor, the local imam, saying, you know, we're going to take this seriously, we're not going to let this one go, and the cop standing there saying absolutely nothing. These are all examples, to different degrees, of why the word diversity feels like the worst possible fit in this conversation.
It is, as I say, we're really not talking about diversity. I mean, I think many of us value an element of diversity, you know, and we want, as I think as the caller or someone in message before said, it's nice to look out and it's nice to value culture, but this is really not what we're talking about. We're talking about kneeling to something which wants to destroy us, I think. And we are talking about lying to ourselves. We can't have an honest conversation about this in public. We still can't. We are still called racist. We are still called gammons. We are all of these, insults that are just thrown at us. Again, it comes back to anti-Semitism, which is right at the heart of this. The people who bang on about cultural diversity and kindness and all of that kind of thing, they are doing the opposite of what they purport to be. Because what are there? About 200,000 Jews in this country? They are the most vulnerable minority in this country at the moment. They are frightened to walk the streets, and it is the Be Kind Brigade. It is the Diversity is Our Strength crew who are putting them in danger, because they are facilitating a very aggressive Islamism. And just to finish the point, Ian, once the toothpaste is out of the tube, it's very, very difficult to get it back. Once you kind of legitimize violence and legitimize terrorism, or at least don't do anything about it, you can't then step back and say, oh, sorry, we got it wrong. You're not allowed to say those things. You're not allowed to do those things anymore. Yeah.
Philip, wise words as ever. Thank you. We really appreciate your time. Philip Kisley, Senior Fellow at the New Culture Forum. I want to speak with Danny Stone, CEO of Anti-Semitism Policy Trust. Afternoon to you, Danny. It's kind of interesting. We're talking about this line, diversity is our strength. And it's wheeled out by politicians almost whenever there's any kind of terror attack. And we've seen some horrendous ones, and ones that are clearly based and have their roots in anti-Semitism, quite clear, Bondi Beach, Manchester, and many others that we could talk about. One of the points I was putting forward is that actually by just wheeling out a platitude like diversity is our strength, which is meant to sound very worthy and kind, is actually rather dangerous, because it almost kind of glosses over the industrial scale anti-Semitism that we see in these kind of cases. And these are just the sort of the most horrific and high profile. It also goes elsewhere.
Oh, well, firstly, thank you for having me on, Ian. I think, look, words are not enough. Right, whatever those words are, the words are not enough. The Jewish community, whilst appreciative of having the support of government, opposition parties and others, is kind of fed up of being told that anti-Semitism is unacceptable and wants to see real action. So where is the government's extremism strategy? What are the regulators doing to regulate in the health sector in reference to technology and online hate and so on and so forth? It needs to be practical action. And if we're talking about kind of phrases, for me, it's less about the kind of the diversity and more about what are our values here. Yeah. Because for me, as a Brit, I've got values in relation to democracy, and I want to see that democracy rigorously and muscularly defended by our politicians. And that means challenging the anti-Semitism at its root, whatever the extremists are and whatever their ideology.
Absolutely, and as Philip was saying there, anti-Semitism, and there's many forms of racism, of course, and I always sort of want to reference the Badil book of Jews Don't Count, and yet here we are with, I don't know how many cases of anti-Semitism are reported on a daily basis. What we do know is that it's an increasing number, and it doesn't seem to still get quite the same focus, and I don't understand that for one second. We have demonstrable evidence of the lethal form of anti-Semitism, which we saw in Australia, we saw in Manchester. But day to day, this stuff does seem to get a free pass for some extraordinary reason.
Yeah, we work with different organisations across different sectors, and anti-Semitism is everywhere. I mentioned the health sector, in culture, media and sport, in the sciences, all over the place. And you talk of the incident numbers, the Community Security Trust, the CST in the UK, has documented these. And we know that whereas it was approximately 100 per month in recent years gone by, we're now up to about 250 to 300 incidents per month in a calendar year. So a significant increase in these incidents. And as you say, many times they'll get a pass because anti-Semitism, for whatever reason, is not considered a form of racism or as serious a form of racism as others, but it is, and it has deadly consequences, as you've been saying. Yeah. And so we need to see action, whether that be arrests, whether that be, as I say, kind of the practical application of an extremism strategy. We need to see more in terms of dealing with where this anti-Semitism is coming from, classrooms, online or elsewhere.
And it is, I think that free pass is largely based on a stereotype, and something else I often mention, taking a call, I think it was a tweet that somebody sent me a couple of years ago saying to me, why are you defending the Jews? They're doing just fine. They are doing just like with this one group, you know, because obviously all Jews are bankers and run Hollywood studios, which was the implication in that text. And it was that sense that clearly people have in their mind, well, the Jews, you know, if you say something about a Jew, then you're punching up, you know, not down. It's that stereotype that's still alive and well, sadly.
You're exactly right. Anti-Semitism punches up and down, so treats Jews as all powerful as well as verminous and lowly. Yeah. I mean, we had a member of parliament use that exact kind of conspiracy over the past year, and that idea that Jews are moneyed or wealthy has a very long history to it. And that's the kind of thing that I think we need to see action on. So we've had members of parliament using that conspiracy. We've had members of parliament engaging in Holocaust inversion, so comparing the Israel-Palestine conflict to the Holocaust, even using kind of anti-Semitic tropes in the chamber of the House of Commons. So parliament needs to get its act in order. Politicians need to get their acts in order. And as you say, these kind of generic statements are not going to cut it. We need to see direct challenge to anti-Semitism in the Commons, the Lords or elsewhere.
Indeed. Danny, thank you for your time, sir. Have a great time over the next few weeks. Danny Stone, CEO of Anti-Semitism Policy Trust. Thank you to him. Over to you. You might want to comment specifically on the anti-Semitism stuff. The diversity thing I find interesting. It was only when I said it out loud about the Batley school teacher and the Wakefield Quran story. And these are really good examples of a problem with a lack of assimilation, when a group of parents stand outside a school calling for the, at best, the sacking of a teacher, at worst, the killing of a teacher, but all agree, you know, and some agreeing that the jailing of a teacher because he showed some cartoon images of a prophet. We heard nothing really from the local MP, Ledbetter. She said almost nothing, when what she should have done is turned up on the back of a truck outside that school with a big old megaphone and said, right, you know, we don't frankly give a toss what you think. Your religious texts are your own. As far as I'm concerned, you can shove them up your own backside. It's got nothing to do with this country or the culture of this country. And she could say that to any faith, by the way, just for the record. But that's what you want to hear. You want to hear somebody come out and say that. But instead, we allowed people at a school gate to compound the problem to the point that a school teacher has had to go into hiding, never been seen or heard of since. New identity, because he fears for his life. Because in a Western democracy, in the United Kingdom, he dared to show it was the Charlie Hebdo story that I think he was telling at the time, and that included showing images of the cartoons. And so what? It should almost be compulsory. But the sensitivities of some clear, mad and extreme thinkers within that faith trumped the rights of a hard-working school teacher. That is not the strength of diversity. That's a failure at every flipping level. 0344 499 1000. the Talk app. You can watch, catch up and listen to all your favourite shows and podcasts anytime, anywhere, all on the Talk app. Watching and listening to Talk just got easier. There's now only one place for the home of common sense. So head over to your App Store or Google Play and search Talk now.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
This comes from Nick in West Sussex this afternoon. Mr. Collins, diversity is our strength. Don't make me laugh. Diversity is divisive. Also, we all need to stop using the word Islamophobia. A phobia is an irrational fear of something. After you're reeling off the list of terror attacks, murders we've seen in the UK and around the world, it is not irrational to be ultra aware of Islamic fundamentalists. Yes, not all Muslims are terrorists, but all hateful Islamists are Muslim. It's time for everybody to wake up to the fact of the matter before it's too late. Keep up the great work. Thank you, Nick, for that, and happy to make those points for you, and many people on social media as well. Kath, who's always there with a wise word, makes the point as well that Hungary and Poland, who don't have the levels of diversity that we talk of, also don't have the same problems that we have over here. Again, few of you making that point. Let's go to Ben in Essex on diversity. What are you making of it, Ben? Good afternoon to you.
Good afternoon, Ian. Yeah, I think it's a weakness. It's made us weaker. I mean, I think we can all agree that it's good to allow diversity in people from other ethnic backgrounds and beliefs. But the problem is it's eroded our culture. Mm-hmm. And I think people, you know, we've all got good hearts, and we've allowed this to creep in to the point where it's now taken over our core beliefs, and it's been weaponised against us. Because if we speak up about it, you're a bigot, you're a racist. And here's the thing: if you go to other countries and, you know, impose yourself, you know, being British or Christian in another nation, yeah, I doubt very much they would accept that. And
how do we police it though, Ben? Because I was thinking about this. If you we live in a democracy and people mooch around the world, and, you know, you and I could go and live in the States, not necessarily together, of course, Ben, although I'm sure we'd have a cracking time. We can go and live in France if we want to, you know, get all the applicants. If we want to change our lives, you can, and people can do it the other way around, and that's fantastic. We also don't stop people worshipping in a synagogue or a mosque or a temple and all that stuff. But then there's a point when you go, actually, do we then have to control expansion or numbers of people, or how other cultures then eat into our life?
I think you do, and I think what you said there, culture. It's a cultural thing where, you know, if you go to someone's country, you should respect the way they are and their culture and their beliefs. There's nothing wrong with having your own belief, but the problem is, in this country, we've allowed it to overtake what we believe in. Yeah. And then it becomes weaponized against us, and that's where the problem is. And I think that this is a cultural thing where people need to get together and think, you know, I believe this, you believe that, but we can all get along, and you know, in a society where we respect the rules, we respect what goes. I mean, look at Dubai, for instance. You know, nobody messes about over there.
No, and that's got all manner of people living over there.
Exactly, because there's a consequence, and the culture is respected. But I think more needs to be said on this, really, because it's getting to a point where it's affecting people's lives.
Well, also when a Labour MP, and I'm sure she's a very nice woman normally, on the very day that this happened, the Bondi Beach attack, the first go-to response is to bang on about diversity is our strength. And it's that, I find that really curious. I find that kind of bizarre that's her. You know, she's not angry enough about what's happened. I'm sure she feels terrible like all of us, but for that on national television to wheel out that line, let's not forget diversity is our strength.
I think that is, I don't know why. It's funny how they all say the same thing, these people, these politicians, and they all speak.
Can't help themselves.
Yeah, they all say the same thing. I mean, do they get together and say, right, we're going to say this? I mean, I've heard some of them talk about, Merry Christmas, how dare we speak Merry Christmas and all this, and it's madness.
Yeah.
But I mean, it's a terrible thing what happened at that shooting. It's a disgrace. But to then turn around and say we should welcome diversity is a kick in the teeth, I think.
Absolutely right, and spectacularly misses the point and almost blatantly refuses to explore the problem by using that line, because she will wheel out that line every day of the week. Ben, thank you very much indeed. Ben in Essex. Some breaking news. A teenage boy has been arrested on suspicion of the murder of a 9-year-old girl who was found dead at an address in Weston-super-Mare on Monday. This is according to Avon and Somerset Police. Every now and again there is a news story and you are forced to kind of just think, what the hell is happening to our world? A teenage boy has been arrested on suspicion of murder of a 9-year-old girl. That's all the details we have at the moment. On Donald Trump, Derek says if the BBC editors had doctored the footage regarding a British politician, it would arguably have been attempting to pervert the course of justice, making it appear that he was inciting violence. The perpetrators at the BBC should be named and made personally liable. We haven't heard much about that bit, have we? The specifics, and I know they perhaps won't name individuals for fear of some horrendous retribution, and we do live in that world now. It's not just a bit of casual doxing as it used to be in the old days. It could be far worse. So I can see why you might not name names, but I'd love to know the process of how it was edited, who was in the room, who said that's okay, who was the person. I understand somebody flagged it and went, this probably isn't okay. How many people were involved in that? I really want to know that bit, because I think it's quite important to making some more rigid conclusions about this horrific edit that happened. More comments on that as well. The lines are open. 2 o'clock. This is Talk.
Across the UK. On DAB+. On YouTube. On your mobile. And on your side. This is Talk.
Remember, kids, diversity is our strength. If ever there was a more destructive, divisive and frankly dangerous phrase, it kind of has to be that, really. We're exploring this. This, by the way, doesn't mean that there's anything wrong with people from different lands, colours, creeds, religions living in one place. But the idea that you somehow hypothecate this diversity word into a strength, which is what Labour MPs have got a PhD in doing, is preposterous. And it comes after one Labour MP, the MP for Darlington, literally, first reaction to the Bondi Beach massacre was diversity is our strength. Yeah. These were two Islamists who had quite clear intentions. This was proven by what the police have gone on to find. They know that there was an ISIS flag, improvised explosives, and these were dangerous, horrendous people. But diversity is our strength. Oh dear. 0344 499 1000. Elsewhere, Donald Trump has filed a $10 billion lawsuit against the BBC, alleging it put false words in his mouth. He's suing for defamation under Florida's Deceptive and Unfair Trade Practices Act. He also suggested the BBC may have used AI or something to fabricate statements. I don't even think they needed to use AI. They just decided to mess around with somebody's words and create a sentence that was never actually said. And redundancies have jumped to 156,000 in the 3 months to October. That is the highest since February 2021 and excluding the pandemic since 2012. Businesses were unsettled by uncertainty over Rachel Reeves's budget, of course, back in November. It's all going so swimmingly for the Labour Party at the moment. But, of course, these are our lives, OK? The economy, even if you loathe the Starmer outfit, we want our country to be doing well. And right now, the figures are not good. Unemployment, again, they've taken another hit. More on that story, too. 0344 499 1000. Derek says, if the BBC editors had doctored the footage Oh, I did read that just a second ago, didn't I? Let me read. There was another BBC one. I'll come back to that. Sergio says diversity of skill is a strength. Correct. Diversity of culture, religion, absolutely a weakness, especially if the core pillars of one specific religion are the opposite of core Western values. Politicians deliberately mix both so we don't highlight the sheer absurdity of claiming that cultural diversity is beneficial. And indeed, we don't call it out. So I come back to the Batley school teacher, which is, to me, one of the best examples, because it was so casual in the way that it got a free pass. Nobody died, although a man's had to change his name and probably his identity as a result of it. But it was the free pass nature of groups of parents standing outside a school baying for this man's incarceration and certainly his firing from his career. He's got to lose his livelihood because he did something with our profit. Well, we don't care about your profit. It means nothing in this country. You're allowed to religiously worship whoever you want to. But we don't go along with that, and nobody else should have to go along with that. I mean, that's reasonable, isn't it? That's perfectly reasonable. You'd only get true diversity if you argued that was reasonable. Otherwise, you're going to get division. And there's the problem. We have division. 0344 499 1000. Let's get a word on a completely different subject, but nonetheless absolutely crucial to our day-to-day lives, and that's doctors. Junior doctors are on strike. From tomorrow, 7 a.m, experts warn the strike, or resident doctors, as they're now called, they're warning it will risk lives and abandon patients when that strike begins tomorrow morning, despite one of the worst NHS flu seasons. The Health Secretary says medics have picked the moment of maximum danger after overwhelmingly rejecting his last-ditch offer. Here he is.
I think it's now clear that what these strikes are really about is the BMA's totally unrealistic demand for another 26% on top of the 28.9% pay rise they've already had. Not only do I think that is unreasonable and obviously unaffordable, I offered to postpone these strikes, to reschedule them for January, because of the enormous risks to patients and the NHS.
That's Wes Streeting speaking to ITV News yesterday. Let's get a word from Dr. David Bull, Chairman of Reform UK, but of course, in your heart, still a clinician, David. Good afternoon to you. Nice to have you with us. And we can't hear David. I'm not sure David can hear us. We will try and get David back on the line because we know he's there somewhere. Mark in Norwich says diversity is a cancer among us. Over the years, countless innocent people have been mindlessly slaughtered due to diversity. Anyone who says diversity is our strength is sick in the head, or they've stuck their head permanently in the sand, or somewhere else maybe, says Mark in Norwich. Thank you for that. Spot on. Don in Chelmsford. Despite record redundancies, this is back to the business story. Businesses closing, people struggling. Rachel from accounts doesn't seem to see how disastrous her budgets have been. No, they've been just fantastic, according to the Labour Party. This one in from Chris. Afternoon, Ian. I want Trump to win and destroy the BBC and make them sort out and have pay-per-view. I won't pay them anything at all. It would be, thank you, Chris, for that. It would be the greatest moment, wouldn't it, for the BBC to say, rather than, because they keep, every time, you know, there's the pressure on the, even putting this Trump story aside, every time there is pressure on the BBC, they talk about, you know, reducing budget, you know, we'll reduce budgets in this department, or, you know, we'll make some redundancies in that department. And there's never been a root and branch fundamental change to the way it runs. In fact, the BBC has expanded because all of their, I think there's like 6 Radio 1s or something. I think even Radio 2 have got like some other offshoot service, which, by the way, kicks into the shins of the commercial world no end. So why are they expanding all of that? God, get rid of that stuff. You haven't got any right to be doing that with taxpayers' money. Then people might take you serious. We have David Bull back with us. David, good afternoon to you.
Good afternoon, Ian. I'm so sorry about that. Obviously, IT issues this high up, when you're at this height of the building, obviously, yes. It falls over. Nice to see you, by the way. Yeah,
you too. When you said this high up, I thought you meant your status in life, David. I mean, you know how there is that.
No, I'm on the 24th floor, actually, so I'm pretty high. Great views of London. Although looking down on London and the rest of the country with the way the resident doctors are behaving, I think it's pretty tragic. Look, I think it's not often I agree with Wes Streeting, but let's just be very clear what the resident doctors have had. They've had a 22% pay rise or thereabout, plus a 5%, so we're now at 27%. They want another 26%. Now, you go to any plumber, carpenter, electrician, nurse, you go to anyone, small business owner, anyone in this country and say, would you like a 55% pay increase? Well, the answer, of course, is yes. Is that going to be acceptable to the employer? Is it actually possible? Is it pragmatic? Is it practical? No. And also, I feel really strongly about this because what they're doing, Ian, it's cold, it's cruel, I think it's incredibly disruptive. And mark my words, it will kill people this Christmas. This is the busiest time for the NHS. And you and I have spoken about this a great deal, but when I was training, we had 300,000 beds in this country, hospital beds, 300,000. We are now down to 180,000 beds. Wow. Our population is 67 million people, so do the maths, there aren't very many beds. I was in hospital last week, already patients lined up in the corridors, no dignity, no one can actually deal with any of this. We've now got high levels of flu, which has started very, very early. Now, whilst it sounds like I'm actually blaming the doctors, I'm not actually in many ways. I'm blaming the British Medical Association. It is a nasty left-wing union. It is seeking to look after itself. It wants to have political power. It senses a very weak Labour government, and I think that is fair to say. The government is very weak. And of course, the government gave in right at the beginning, didn't it? It said, right, you can have huge pay rises, and they thought that would be the end of that. Yeah. But that's not how these unions work. And in fact, I was so disgusted by the way that the BMA was behaving. I resigned my membership, as have many of my friends who are physicians. And look, for a junior doctor, now resident doctors, There are lots of problems. I don't think the pay is that awful. Their hours have been reduced. But where I think it is wrong is that we are giving training places to non-British people, and that is something that Wes Streeting was trying to change. But also the mountain of debt that these kids are in by the time they become doctors. If they then can't get a job, then obviously they can't pay it back. And that's why, and I will use my political hat here, as someone who trained in the NHS, who knows a lot about medicine, that is why the policies that I've written into our manifesto will directly look after resident doctors and nurses and physios and ensure we keep them in the service. It is absolutely foolhardy when you see junior doctors running off to Australia, South Africa and so on. We train them in this country.
I was just about to ask you that question about what would reform do. Are you suggesting then, David, you would actually write off student debt for medical students?
Yeah, that's something I'm really keen to do, actually. So there needs to be a contract to say that actually, if you stay within the NHS for a set period of time, this hasn't been nailed down yet, but let's say 10 years, then we will pro rata actually take away your debt. So the longer you stay in the NHS, the more of that debt will pay off. And I think that is the right thing. I was very lucky because when I trained, of course, there were no tuition fees. And so suddenly when tuition fees came in and this insanity of 50% wanting to or needing to go to university under Tony Blair, then obviously we saw the increment in student debt, and of course those debt levels continue to increase. There is another thing as well. I'm deeply worried we're not taking the right people into medicine in the first place. And back in my day, it wasn't just about your academic grades. It was about whether you are a good person, a caring person. Did you want to look after people? Now, I've been talking to a lot of doctors who feel that their juniors may not be in medicine for the right reason. And so obviously it's great to be able to say you're a doctor, you get highly trained, you come out with 4 A stars or whatever it is, and you get accepted. But what about those kids from deprived backgrounds who actually are very bright, who maybe didn't get the grades because they didn't have the family infrastructure to look after them? What are we doing with them? Why are they not being doctors? Because actually, I would argue they would make better doctors in many ways if they've come from areas of social deprivation where they see homelessness, where they see drug problems on the streets and so on. So I think we need to radically relook at all of this. But I just will reiterate again, my beef is not with the doctors. My beef is with the British Medical Association, who are using this to their advantage because they know that if they don't do that, they have basically got no job left.
Yeah, and this is a union. I said it to Dave Wooding, the journalist, a little earlier, David, that, this functions like, Poland did in 1978 in terms of the robust, impenetrable nature of left-wing unions. It's in another place.
It is. You're absolutely right. And of course, I go back to the bigger issue, which is if you look at the government generally, I have never known such a dysfunctional, rudderless government with no ideology, no belief structure. It really doesn't know what it's doing. It has managed to cripple businesses with the employers' national insurance increase from 13.8% up to 15%. It's crippled the farmers. It's crippled pretty much anyone in this country who is trying to earn a living. And so the unions, and remember, these are left-wing trade unions who can see, right, we have a weak government, we are going to make the most of that weak government. And the government made a massive mistake early on by saying, we're going to pay you lots of money and the problem is then solved. That is not how you deal with unions.
And in terms of spaces or places for newly qualified doctors, David, am I right in saying that there are limitations? So we often hear of people who've left medical school, they've done the whole bit, and it's hard work, as I know in the 50s when you were training, it was probably slightly different, but nonetheless, nobody. I had to get one of those in there somewhere. Nobody will dispute the amount of work. I've known so many medical students, and it's the pressure is properly on, and then you finish and realise, actually, there's no jobs to go to because they've limited the amount of places. What's that all about?
But the whole thing is absolutely insane. Of course, we want to keep the British trained doctors in the system and to ensure that primacy goes to British doctors. We need more training places. Now, to be fair to the government, they've said we will increase those numbers of training places. But it's always been tough. But again, from my perspective as Reform UK, stop importing cheap labour, stop importing doctors from other countries, train our own, make sure they get training places so that actually they stay in this country, they contribute to the economy, they become consultants or GPs or whatever it is in this country. And that is the way you build a much better and fairer NHS. Actually importing cheap labour, and when you import people who don't speak English as a primary language, those consultations take far longer. It is not the right thing to do. It's a shortcut, but actually it's going to cause abject misery.
Spot on. David, great to have you on. Great to see you again. Looking well, I should add. Dr. David Bull, he is the chairman of Reform UK and formerly of this parish, of course. Thank you to him. Over to you on that one. Is there anyone that actually sides with the doctors on this? I thought David made some great wider points on what needs to be done, particularly keeping doctors in the NHS once you've got them, but also opening up and not going for the sort of shortcut, oh, we've got to import loads of doctors because we haven't got enough doctors here. You know, do something about it then, government. I'm sure West Streeting, I'd like to think West Streeting is onto it, at least to some degree. Let's go to your calls. On this very point, Jackie is in Oldham. Are you supporting the doctors, Jackie? Good afternoon to you.
Good afternoon, Ian. No, not after spending a full day in A&E on Friday, which resembled a war zone. It was absolutely appalling. Now, I worked in the NHS for 23 years on the front line and in various roles, and I was embarrassed. I was embarrassed, Ian, and appalled at what I saw. This is a health service that is on its knees. It is absolutely on its knees. There were trolleys up and down the corridor. There were people screaming for pain relief. Wow. There was nursing staff running around like headless chickens. And with my care, a mistake was made when I was discharged, and now I'm in a system where I'm being passed from pillar to post, and nobody will accept responsibility, and it's not good enough. Yeah. It's just not good enough. And the junior doctors to walk out, I know David said, you know, his beef is with the BMA, but I'm sorry, those junior doctors are highly educated people. They know the consequences of their actions if they walk off the job. And I find it absolutely abhorrent when we've already got people dying on corridors, which is the height of indignity, that they would increase the pressure at this time of year when the health system is in such chaos. I despair. The standards have dropped. The organisation is appalling. It wasn't like this years ago. And yes, we've had an increase in population, but there are things that are going radically wrong. I agree with David that we're not employing the right people to do the jobs. But it needs a massive overhaul because
it really does, doesn't it? And it's again, as we were talking about, you know, the BBC, all big institutions that have just carried on, and every time they talk about an overhaul, all they do is sort of tinker around the edges a little bit, and they move a few managers and they alter, you know, the amount of hours that you can go to a clinic or something. It needs so much more than that. It needs something so seismic that it's almost unrecognisable from what it is now, and you retain all the good bits and you just get rid of all the chaff and the nonsense. Jackie, thank you. Great call. 0344 499 1000. This is Talk. Talk app. You can watch, catch up and listen to all your favourite shows and podcasts anytime, anywhere, all on the Talk app. Watching and listening to Talk just got easier. There's now only one place for the home of common sense. So head over to your App Store or Google Play and search Talk now.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
This is Talk, 24 minutes after 2 o'clock. We're heading towards Christmas, of course, and it's grim, sadly. No, Christmas is lovely, but the news agenda is pretty... it's just pretty dark and troubling when so much of the things that go wrong in our life and so many of the areas that we debate on a daily basis could be sorted. That's the problem. When things could be sorted, if we had a government that had any kahunas that could actually just say it and tell it like it is and get on with it, we might be in a different place. Ian is down in London on doctors' strikes. What do you think of it, Ian?
Oh, hold on.
I'm holding, mate.
Hi, Ian.
That's all right. That's okay.
I'm hoping you're going to have a great holiday as well. Right.
Thank you.
We've got 2 points on the same person, Mr. Streeting.
Yep.
Right. Before the general election, he'd already announced to the BMA he would give them exactly what they wanted.
Yep.
And if you walk into a room and you're trying to do a deal, but you say, "Don't worry, I'm going to give you exactly what you want," you know, without any doubt, they're going to come back for more.
Of course.
Right.
It's like, the night follows day cliche, right?
Yeah, absolutely. He's done that and he's followed through. With the same person with diversity, in the local area, which I come from, Woodford, near him, right? Before, he used to sort of get involved very much with the local old Jewish community, which had one of the biggest communities in the country at one time, if not Europe. Now, he is never, ever seen. It is just purely the other way.
What happened?
He's just basically, we know, he nearly got kicked out. He was, 600 votes just about scraped through?
Yep.
And I said it before, I can't sort of prove it. I know most probably he'll look for another seat before the next election.
Yeah.
If he wants to become... But I think it's like everyone at the top of Labour, slowly but surely, dirt or rubbish that they've done is coming out. You look at it, all of them couldn't organise anything.
No, they couldn't.
Chocolate tea.
Yeah, and it is. I don't think the Labour Party were prepared for how the world had changed since they were in power 15 years ago. I honestly think I'd never really thought about this point quite so much until this moment, to be honest. But they thought you could just come in, be the Labour Party as they saw it, just not be the Conservatives and win an election. And that's just not good enough. They've not come in with like this big roadmap, like boiling over with political ideology and great ideas. There's none of that.
But they haven't got the sort of characters. Listen, looking back, people like Tony Benn or the other one, all those sort of characters that had a bit of profile or no, it's not profile. What's the charisma about them?
100%.
Right? They haven't got that.
Yep.
And the ones that would be like that are so far back in the back benches, and I'm not talking about Corbyn and that sort of mob. The other ones, Tony Benn's son, is it? I can't remember his first name. They don't want to know with him.
Hillary Benn, yeah.
Hillary Benn.
I'd totally forgotten about him. When you have his son.
He's gone.
Yeah.
He's disappeared. But they haven't got, as we all say time after time, realistically, they would never have won the election if people had voted Conservative in the normal way.
Very true. Very true. Great point. Lovely to have you on, Ian. Thank you, mate, for that. 0344 499 1000. There's nothing really kind of underpinning it. And I was listening to Wes Streeting talking yesterday. He was talking about doctors, but he was talking about a range of other things as well. And I thought, this is the bloke they're saying could be the next Prime Minister. And, I know Wes Streeting is kind of a bit better and a bit more accessible than many of the others. I was just listening, I thought, is that really a Prime Minister? Has he really got that fire in his belly to do what this country needs right now? And that's for somebody to call it out, tell it like it is, don't mess around, don't wheel out daft phrases and platitudes like diversity is our strength on the back of a terrorist attack, for goodness sake. I don't think he is, so I don't know who is. And I'm all right with that because it's the Labour Party we're talking about here. Let's go to Sam down in Devon. Sam, what have you got for us?
I'm probably one of the few who says, give them what they want, and that goes across the civil sector, but in return for that, the pension contributions have got to come in line with private pensions. We're going to see a pension explosion in the next 20 years.
Mm-hmm.
Let's bring the civil sector back in line with
Did that come up as a kind of a potential agreement that it was refused? Because I get the impression that the British Medical Association want both. Yeah, they want both, don't they? Want to say, no, we want to retain the gold-plated nature of our pensions, plus we want a pay rise. And you think, well, surely there's a point when, they must read newspapers over there at the BMA, Sam. They must know that the country is skint. They must know that we've got, God knows how much money's worth of debt hanging around our neck, and they must know that our economy is basically stagnated. They can't not know that.
I'm sure an actual real economist, unlike Rachel, could probably work out somewhere that there's a happy medium between giving them that extra on the yearly salary and taking it off the pension. I've heard the BMA come out and say it's because we don't have enough sort of money day to day for our employees. Well, this is offering them money up front and taking it away from them down the line. It's sort of asked for that already.
I would have thought that would be perfectly reasonable, but at the moment, as you rightly say, it's not really on the table, is it? And I don't know why, because that would seem like the greatest compromise.
It'd be an easy narrative for him to get over the line with the public.
Yeah, of course it would. Of course it would. Sam, thank you very much indeed. Love that call. Great to have you on with us. Tim says, to put some context onto David Bull's comments on the number of beds, what we spend on illegals every year would buy us around 6 hospitals the size of Coventry every year. That gives you some kind of idea of where we're at. Thank you, Tim, for that. As he said, 300,000. When would David have qualified as a doctor? I'm tempted to say the 90s, early 90s or something. Would that be about right? Something of that nature? I don't want to date David Bull because he's a mate and a former colleague. And maybe it was it could have been the 60s. I don't know. It's David we're talking about. It's very hard to tell with that man. At that time, he said 300,000 beds were in the NHS. Now there's, I think he said 180,000. And we had a population increase in that time, so go figure. And yes, of course, there were too many. Women used to have a baby in hospital and stay in the hospital for about like a week after the baby. Now they come out about an hour later. It's a whole different ballgame. And that's great that you don't, you've realised medical advancement has meant that, we know that there's certain procedures where you don't have to stay in. And that makes sense to all of us. But is it beds we need, more capacity, or complete root and branch rethink of how we run the NHS? 0344 499 1000. More on the way, some great calls and comments. Let me just bring you this one from Karen. It says, my son is a third-year medical student and he worked so incredibly hard to get his uni place, including navigating his father's death when he was only 13. I worry about the debt he's incurring, £100,000 for 5 years, and the fact there are so few training places available due to the amount that go to IMGs, that's the International Medical Graduates. I don't support the strikes for an increase in salary, but a part of me supports it as I want my son and his peers to have jobs to go to once qualified. Merry Christmas. Thank you, Karen, for that. It's interesting, isn't it? I don't know the reason why the international medical graduate... I can understand if you need a brain surgeon and you've got to import one from India or Nigeria or, you know, France, whatever country. But if we're talking about medical graduates, which will be the same as our medical students finish, I would assume, what's going on? What's the reason for that? 0344 499 1000.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
This is Talk, 25 to 3. Let me bring you this story as well. Keir Starmer under fire for refusing to scrap the cruel tax, the tax raid on farmers, despite reports some elderly and terminally ill owners are considering taking their own lives before an inheritance levy begins in April. He acknowledged the claims but insisted it's a sensible reform, reigniting opposition calls to ditch the move. What does he mean by a sensible reform? This is a political choice. And boy, is it political. I mean, this is not about, you know, somebody who's done some deep dive into the economics of farming and come out with the irredeemable conclusion that you've got to put this inheritance tax issue into play that was never there. There's nothing, none of that. This is about the fact, oh, it's farmers, they've got a few quid, let's tax them. It's that simple, and they're probably not Labour voters anyway. That's what I think's going on. Gareth Wynne-Jones is a farmer, joins us now. Gareth, good afternoon to you.
Blanda, how are you?
Very good, nice to have you with us. It is interesting, isn't it, because everyone lives in hope when a government makes a batty or a wacky decision, and this was certainly one of them. You live in hope that, well, maybe they'll have a rethink. You know, they did have a rethink on winter fuel allowance. Maybe they'll rethink on this one, but they appear to be doubling down, Gareth.
Yeah, this government is targeting the countryside, farmers, businesses, pubs. It's destroying our country, to be honest with you. Heartbreaking, you know, especially when he's heard yesterday that people are thinking of taking their own lives so they don't have to pay this inheritance tax before April. It just shows you that he has no connection with the farming community, and what what we mean to this country, the people that are feeding the nation, the people that he should be protecting. And let's not forget, in the NFU conference, he said he was going to protect family farms, because family farms, once they're gone forever.
Yeah.
And this is the man now that put the biggest bombshell against our industry ever. And we have to remember, our industry gets a 1% return of what it's, what we're as a business. So it's a very, very small amount of money that we're going to get back. And all our investments are in the land and in our infrastructure, in our machinery.
Yeah.
And that's what keeps us being able to produce food that's affordable for the nation. And these numpties down in Parliament don't get it.
Yeah.
Sad thing is, the poorer people in society are going to be paying through their noses for food, and we're going to have food shortages because people are getting out of this business. They've had a bellyful. They've had the absolute bellyful. There's many, many farmers in London as we speak now, in Westminster, protesting against this ludicrous inheritance tax. Supermarkets are pushing down the prices of milk at the moment. They're talking about beef being knocked down in the new year. There's no way a lot of these farmers can survive. And where's the food going to come from? Ian, come on, tell me, where's that food going to come from if we don't have food security in this country?
It's an extraordinary misstep. It's not even a misstep. It's a crime scene of an error for this government. I was talking to a farmer just a couple of weeks ago, got 1,000 acres in Kent, and he was pointing. I said, look, there's a big building over there, combine harvesters, tractors, goodness knows what. He said, people look at all this land and they look. He's got arable. He's got all sorts of things going on. He said, you would cry if I told you how much I personally earn out of this. He said, it's good. But people look at it and they go, wow, look, 1,000 acres. Look, he's doing all right. He's got all that equipment. That's 100,000 quid's worth of plant right there. And of course, the reality, as you just suggested there, Gareth, as well, is that it isn't, a millionaire's paradise. We've just lost Gareth's line on that very point, which is a shame, because this subject, I hope, doesn't go away. I hope it haunts Keir Starmer and this government for all the right reasons, because it doesn't make a lot of sense. It works on the worst kind of stereotyping. You've got a farm, so therefore you're doing all right. Well, if I sold everything I've got and just flogged the land to a housing developer, then, maybe I could have that hammock in Barbados, but I run a farm, it's in my family, it's in the blood. I've got no desire to sell it, and my son and my daughter both work for the farm. They will take it over. They also don't want to sell it either. This will be its legacy. It's family-based. That's how it works. Oh, and by the way, we supply a severe amount of money, a severe amount of food, of course, a serious amount of food to the United Kingdom's food chain as well. Gareth is back with us. Nice to have you. We lost you momentarily there.
I think it was Keir Starmer that cut me off.
I think it was. He was waiting in that bush just behind you. He's got your Wi-Fi code. That's what it is. But it is, as far as I can work this out, Gareth, it's just it's a real lack of knowledge from our government of farming. And it's also a huge stereotype. I was just talking about the farmer with 1,000 acres. There are farmers with much more than that. That doesn't mean you're rich, because the farmer was explaining to me, I'm not going to sell this in a year's time and go and live in Barbados. This becomes my children's farm. They're also not going to sell it. That's how it works. It was my grandfather's. I dated it back to sort of 1850 or something. It's been here forever. That's how it works. The money is in the land, maybe, but I could sell it to a housing developer and live in Barbados, but that isn't part of the plan. And that's the bit that I think some of our politicians are missing. They see your land, they see your tractors, and they see a rich man. Why should you not pay more tax like everybody else?
Well, we pay tax on everything else that we do, you know.
Of course you do.
And I don't think inheritance tax should be on anybody. You've paid money on that tax to buy that house and, develop a business. There shouldn't be inheritance tax on anybody. We pay enough tax on everything. Our cars, our food, everything that we use is taxed. And it's, if it was tax that was going to a good cause, maybe there'd be some people out there that would be thinking, oh, yeah, I don't mind paying a little bit towards it. But, as a 40% taxpayer, I am absolutely disgusted at where my money goes to. I want it to go to the NHS. I want it to go to education. You know, I want it to go to the right places. But as a farmer, I think it's imperative that people understand the more pressure that's put on our industry, the more land that'll be sold, and the more that your Bill Gates and your BlackRocks will start to take over the land. And we lose then our skill set of the people that can produce food from different areas. My family's been on this farm for 375 years. We know how to produce food from some of the harshest places on earth, and we do it in an environmentally friendly way, in a sustainable way, and it feeds people with healthy, nutritious food, as in lamb and in beef. And these idiots in government don't get it because they don't understand the importance of the people that are on the land. And you lose them people in one generation, you are in big trouble. And we need to get this message out to government. Stop this ludicrous inheritance tax. Start to back British agriculture. Fair prices, you know, they have fair trade for every country across the world, and we can't have fair trade for what we're producing. And one thing I'd like to add as well, we need to build a better Britain on our belly. That would save millions to the NHS if we were feeding the children with more nutritious, healthy food that comes directly from farm instead of processed foods. And another thing, if we have a farming food revolution here in the United Kingdom, we could be, you know, forward thinking because we've got a government that's backing us. Look at Greece, look at France. All these farmers are out protesting against their governments. There's something radically wrong in the world when you are attacking the people that are feeding you.
Yeah, absolutely spot on. That was a great point about sort of the radical overhaul and the health aspects of farms, because that, if ever there was a time, Gareth, for that to come into action, it's right now, because all of these subjects, you know, talk about childhood obesity and goodness knows what else, you'd think somebody would be joining, I hate the phrase, but joined up thinking in government will be, you know, kind of putting these two things together, saying, hang on a second, we don't need fewer farmers, we need more farmers.
Exactly. And, you know, the average age of a farmer now is over 65. Where's the next generation? Nobody wants to come into an industry that we've got massive mental health issues because of the pressure on us. People are taking their own lives. You know, we know they have got blood on their hands in government already. They are targeting the countryside. They are targeting the people that are feeding them. And, you know, there is a saying, don't bite the hand that feeds you, because one day there'll be empty bellies in these cities and they will be crying for farmers to come back and produce food to feed them. And we don't want handouts. We don't want charity. We just want a fair price for what we are doing. And you know what? We want to be a little bit respected by these people that should be steering our country to a brighter future, not absolutely destroying it like this Labour government is doing already.
All right. Listen, Gareth, great point you make, sir. Thank you. Good luck with everything too. Gareth Wynne-Jones. You can hear the frustration, I think that puts it kindly, mildly, into with what he was saying there. But Labour aren't going to buckle on this one because it's sort of up there with the VAT on private schools thing. It's just kind of within their sort of rather vacuous idea of what they think is political ideology. It doesn't mean very much. Just scoop in another few quid from different departments because you can, without thinking about the slightly wider consequences. On the issue of nursing and doctors' strikes, one here says maybe we should take away the need of a degree to go into nursing and go back to learning on the job. Then potential nurses will be at the coalface from the beginning of their career progression. Yeah, bang on. I mean, I think that's absolutely spot on. It would have been unthinkable a few years ago. I think I've told this story many times. My auntie literally knocked on the door of a hospital years ago and just said, have you got any jobs as nurses? And I said, well, you can come and train with us. And she did, and did the job for about 40 years. What's the reason you can't go into that? We're talking about diversity as well. Is diversity really our strength? Grace in London, what do you think? Good afternoon.
Hi, good afternoon. I think it slightly depends on how we're defining diversity, because it's good for people to be able to have a diversity of ideas. And I think that ethnic diversity can potentially be a great thing. But I think that, as has been highlighted, to presume that different worldviews are all necessarily entirely equal could be a mistake. And I think we can maybe value people whilst, as human beings, whilst not necessarily saying that we agree entirely with their worldviews, because I think that there is such a thing as objective truth. I mean, as I've said previously, if someone were to attack something about Christianity or our holy book or something, it wouldn't bother me in the way that it seems to bother some other people when a certain prophet has been offended, because I believe that Jesus having risen from the dead is objectively true, whatever other people think about it or mock it or what have you. And to some extent, our society was shaped by some of the ideas that stem from Christianity. But also, one of your previous callers mentioned being British or Christian, and Christianity isn't something that we do just inherit. It's not a matter of heritage. It's really shaped our society, but it's not really a matter of heritage. It's a personal decision whether or not one is going to choose to repent and follow Jesus.
Do you want to? Do you want? I mean, obviously, I would imagine, Grace, as a Christian, you want Christianity to grow. Okay, you'd like more people to be Christians, and fewer people to be following other faiths.
I am most interested in people choosing personally to turn to Jesus, and I think that needs to be their decision, and it can't be imposed on anyone. And if people are going to follow other faiths, then that's entirely up to them. I'm not really thinking, are people following this faith or following no faith? Either way, I really hope that they find Jesus, because as mad as it sounds, I think there's actually good reason to believe that he rose from death, and therefore he offers us something great, and he's given me and other people a lot of joy. So I want people to know that, and so that's what I personally would like. But it's entirely people's.
But is there? Do you not see sometimes fundamental and tangible clashes where different religions, whose values and beliefs are wildly different to your Christian ones in many respects? How do you read that as a Christian when you see that happen?
It's hard to pinpoint, because within any given group, say Muslims for instance, there's a huge range of ideas and views and practices. And there are a lot of Muslims, for example, who are doing great things and who I feel some degree of affinity with sometimes, because I think, well, they're searching for God, and that's great. And then there are some others who have views that none of us would endorse. So it's hard to kind of pinpoint. But one thing I do feel is that, in contrast to the idea that our values are just being wiped away by people coming into the country with different religions, I think that actually we, the white population, are leaving behind some of the values that we have had. I think that commercialism has to some extent changed our values and worldviews. So as opposed to saying, well, Islam is taking over, actually some of the ideas that help to make our society good, like the idea of self-sacrifice and putting other people first, that to some extent is being eroded. I think the doctor's strike is a good example of this. Previously, we all understood that it was good to try, though we fail at it terribly, to try to put other people first. But our own Western culture has gradually shifted to the idea of putting oneself first. And so it's not just a matter of different ideas coming in from other cultures. I think our own culture is changing in a way that's a bit worrying.
OK, great, thank you. 0344 499 1000. Our culture is changing in a way that's a bit worrying. I think there's definitely something in that. Our lines are open. You can message 87222 10 to 3. This is Talk. the Talk app. You can watch, catch up and listen to all your favourite shows and podcasts anytime, anywhere, all on the Talk app. Watching and listening to Talk just got easier. There's now only one place for the home of common sense. So head over to your App Store or Google Play and search Talk now.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
It is Talk. Just before we go back to more comment from you, we've got the voice of doom. It's day 3, I think. Day 2. It's a brand new voice, a mystery voice, of course, but it's a politician, young, old, left, right, dead, alive, you name it. But it is a politician. Who is this?
Going to be community relations.
I think it's hard. We say that every time. If you know who this is.
Going to be community relations.
87222. Don't phone, just message. 87222. Here's the voice.
Going to be community relations.
And if we get a right answer, we will reveal all after the news at 3 o'clock. This comes in from Jacqueline. Oh, can we hear it one more time, Amy?
Going to be community relations.
Any thoughts? 87222. Jacqueline in Liverpool says, as a mother of a newly qualified doctor, not only do people not realise what it takes to actually become one, I think people need to realise that they are only guaranteed a job with the NHS for the first 2 years, as there's 10,000 speciality places for 30,000 people, and it's flooded with foreign-trained medical students. My son works regular 60 hours a week for just under £39,000, and if it was that easy, why don't more people go into it? I'll tell you why. Because it's not. People need to remember that they can earn double in other countries that respect doctors, or can leave the profession altogether and be snapped up in industries like banking. And whilst we have billions to spend on illegal boatmen and benefit bums, we can pay and give young doctors job security. It's a great point, Jacqueline, as well. Again, I'm slightly flummoxed by the foreign inclusion in those places. You'd think, well, surely number one on the list, if you have too many people who've been newly qualified and there's not enough jobs, you would remove that pool so it was only British-born students that would be in the running, right? I mean, that's fair. So as Gordon Brown said, British jobs for British workers. I think the other reason why a lot of people don't go into medicine is because it's darn hard. It's really hard. Really, really hard. And having to keep remembering it. I remember a friend of mine who used to work when I was on TalkSport, Juan. He was our phone operator. And I remember him saying, you know, you learn pretty much everything in that first year. And what do you do for the second year? You learn it again. And third year, you learn it again. Fourth, you learn it. You just keep learning this stuff. Because, you can't not. And that's the reason why it's difficult. I think there's a lot of people, not just the issue with money, but the issue with the amount of commitment you've got to have. Nico is in London. On the issue of diversity, Nico, what have you got for us? Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Ian. Nice to be on the show.
Nice to have you with us.
Just a couple of short points I wanted to make. The people who claim diversity as our strength celebrate diversity in a lot of immigrant communities, and I used to live in East London in Stepney, in the middle of the Bangladeshi community.
Yep.
But these people, do they celebrate the fact, and I saw this firsthand, that women and girls in those communities are second-class citizens, are not treated equally, and whose lives are often controlled by men? Do they like that kind of diversity, which goes against their own,
Yeah, it doesn't really get talked about, does it? I used to live just in Bow, just around the corner from where you are. So yeah, indeed, same community that you're talking. I think it's the largest Bangladeshi community outside of Bangladesh. I think I'm right in saying. And you're right. I mean, I had no truck with anybody when I lived there, and no problems in that respect. But it is culturally a very, very different affair.
Yeah, I mean, what's their vision for liberating women in those communities who are second-class citizens. They don't have any because they think to criticise them is racist, and yet they then tolerate, essentially sexual discrimination. I find it bizarre.
Yeah, even to the point of there being no compulsion within the family for some of the girls to even learn English.
Yes, yeah. I mean, one of our neighbours, the elderly wife of one of our neighbours, didn't speak English at all. She must have lived in the UK for 30, 40 years. It was a kind of prison that essentially the left let these women live in.
Well, when I was living in that neck of the woods, I remember there was if anything, if my neighbour needed anything, because she couldn't speak English exactly as you've just described, the kid would knock on the door. I mean, they had a water leak one day, and I opened the door. There's a 6-year-old kid standing there going, my mum's got a problem with the water, can you help? And they had to send the kid round because the mum didn't speak English. And then I'm mooching around the house looking for a flipping stopcock, which I did eventually find, thankfully, because I'm obviously a super DIY man. Listen, Nico, I've got to step in. I know you had another point to make, but we've hit the clock because the news is upon us. Thank you for that. That is a good point about a kind of two-tier system. And I know, because I've worked alongside Bangladeshis, I know that doesn't apply all over the show, but it is something that's prevalent in that community. Back with more of your calls in a couple of moments. This is Talk Right Now, News at 3.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
And good afternoon. Remember, kids, diversity is our strength. We're exploring that aspect of our life at the moment after the horrendous murderous attacks by Islamists in Australia. We already have a succession of politicians around the globe, including here. See MP for Darlington for details. Diving straight into that area. But we must remember, bad as it is, diversity is our strength. They can't help themselves. Your thoughts on that? Many would argue, actually, it's our greatest division. Lines are open. Also this afternoon, Paul Doyle has now been jailed for 21 and a half years for driving into crowds at the Liverpool FC title parade back in May, injuring more than 130 people. The judge said he drove over limbs, crushed prams, noting that Doyle's violent past, including assault of a colleague and offence, although he'd had no offences for the last 32 years until this attack. 21 and a half years in jail. Is that justice? And government reforms will pay dentists more to treat urgent cases. A report has urged £150 annual dental vouchers to end the postcode lottery, with the think tank Policy Exchange saying the plan could save NHS dentistry and fix our national smile. It costs a packet to visit the tooth man. Is this one way of alleviating pressure? Details on the way, everything you need to know, all the breaking news right here on Talk. Lots to get through. David in the Cotswolds says, pay the doctors what they want, just take it off the budget that the NHS gets. Get rid of the diversity inclusion department and a whole lot of useless top brass, and the job is done. It's not about paying more into the NHS, it's just about putting the cash where it's most needed. I get that, David. A few people have mentioned, you know, why not mess around with the pensions, because that would make a little more sense. You know, pensions can be planned for with many years in advance. So give the pay rise, take it from the top line at the end upon retirement. Would that not work? 0344 499 1000. Now, as you've been hearing, because we've mentioned this a couple of times, Donald Trump has filed a £10 billion lawsuit against the BBC. He's alleging that it put false words into his mouth about January the 6th. He's suing for defamation. This comes under a Florida law. And he's seeking £5 billion on each count. He suggests the BBC may have even used AI or something to fabricate some of his statements. Let's have a listen to Mr. Trump.
In a little while, you'll be seeing I'm suing the BBC for putting words in my mouth, literally. They put words in my mouth. They had me saying things that I never said coming out. I guess they used AI or something. So we'll be bringing that lawsuit. A lot of people are asking, when are you bringing that lawsuit? Even the media can't believe that one. They actually put terrible words in my mouth having to do with January 6th that I didn't say. And the beautiful words that I said, right? The beautiful words, talking about patriotism and all of the good things that I said, they didn't say that, but they put terrible words. They actually have me speaking with words that I never said, and they got caught because I believe somebody at BBC said, this is so bad, it has to be reported. That's called fake news. So we'll be filing that suit probably this afternoon or tomorrow morning.
Well, he did say the words, just not in that order, as the phrase goes, and it was a horrendous thing for whoever. And I'd still love to get, I said it earlier, I'd just love to hear the sort of finer details of how this was, how it came together. I want to know who was in the, what they call the edit suite, how many people were there, was there a meeting beforehand to come to you know, why don't we take these words and make them into a different sentence that would be more powerful? Or did somebody, and this would be such breathtaking levels of naivety that it's worth losing your job for, did somebody think it was actually OK, that it still represented pretty much? I'm told by people who saw the show, the whole programme, that it didn't jar quite as much if you watched the whole thing. But that's the point, isn't it? It's not about that, because social media and clips that are taken from programmes, it was a manufactured sentence that was constructed via the conduit of editing. And somebody somewhere must have given that the go-ahead. And somebody gave it the green light to be broadcast. And invariably with the BBC and programmes like Panorama, they send that to lawyers as well. So it doesn't, I mean, maybe the lawyer wouldn't know. The lawyer would assume, it came from a complete, wouldn't have been the lawyer's position necessarily to adjudicate on the editing process, just the completed article. And probably wouldn't have occurred to many people anyone would have changed somebody's words so substantially. Let's get a word from Ian Bloom, media law consultant. Ian, good afternoon to you.
Good afternoon, Ian.
I mean, it is a bizarre story for many different reasons. I'm intrigued just journalistically how, you know, I want to know who was there and how they came to, did somebody go, yeah, I think we got away with it, or did somebody go, oh, that sounds fine, you know, who gave it the green light? We can argue that forever. What we do know, however, that it's resulted in a lawsuit of 10 billion quid from the president. Has he got a chance of winning?
Well, good afternoon again. I wasn't in the edit suite, I'm glad to say.
Oh, that would have been a great scoop if you'd have said, yes, I was sitting at the back.
Well, I like to think I like to think that I would have been concerned at the elision, at the way that this speech was edited in such a way as to allow Donald Trump to bring this case. Has he got a case? That, you know, there's several arguments in his favor, there's several arguments against. Which do you want first, for or against?
Well, tell us the for first. Why could it look positive for the president?
These are headline points in his favor.
Okay.
First of all, the case is now going to be heard in Florida. It's his home state. It's a Republican state. It's likely to be before a judge and a jury. So that's in his favor. And that jury and the judge may not take kindly to an overseas media organization dissing their president. The next is that there's a history of awarding eye-watering damages in US trials.
Yep.
We've seen, I think, examples in the past. Millions and millions are awarded, whereas in England, a comparable case would get tens, possibly low hundreds of thousands. They're different ballgame. The BBC, we know, have apologised for the mistake they made. There's no question that they made a serious mistake. And finally, other media companies in the States, the big ones, have recently settled for low millions of dollars in damages. So they're the points in his favour.
And the points against them. What is he up against in reality?
What he's done is file, and I read earlier today, this 33-page document, this detailed filing. The biggest problem he's got, well, there's two big problems. The first problem is jurisdiction. Although he claims that the programme defames him, what he can't establish, what he hasn't established in this filing, is that anyone in the United States actually saw it.
Yeah.
Now, this is a problem. If you can't show that this program was seen by someone in Florida, why have you got a case against the BBC? And although they spend maybe 100 paragraphs claiming that the BBC is accessible, and they even, for God's sake, quote Liz Truss as someone who is an authority on this, it's a weak case. Second problem they've got is that he actually won the election a week after the programme was put out.
True.
Where's his damages? He's claiming 5 or 10 billion, 5 billion in each limb of the claim. But where's the damage? He has, in the last year, I think, successfully concluded business ventures. There is no evidence that he suffered any financial loss whatsoever. And there's a third issue, and that is this, that there's a much tougher freedom of speech regime in the States than there is here. There's a 1964 massively important Supreme Court case which established that the bar for a successful defamation claim is you've got to show malice. Now, they assert malice, they claim it's malicious, but there's no evidence that the BBC deliberately and maliciously set out to defame Donald Trump. They made a stupid mistake. That's the case against Donald Trump.
Yeah, and am I right in saying, Ian, that you would normally in these kind of cases have to show a kind of demonstrable and tangible examples that you had either your reputation had been shattered or your finances had been shattered, some form of loss against you?
Yeah, that follows a determination as to whether there's liability. There's two aspects. First, is do they have the jurisdictional entitlement to go ahead, yes or no? If no, case is dismissed. If yes, go on to look at the merits. Did they make a mistake? Yes. Is it malicious? That's the argument.
Yeah.
And then even if it is malicious, is there any loss? That comes at the end of the process. Is there loss? Well, no one on this side of the Atlantic has been able to understand the extent, if any, of Donald Trump's loss.
Yeah.
He seems to have used the presidency as a form of lawfare against the media organizations. He makes money out of suing.
Sure.
This is a litigation tactic designed to intimidate the BBC into settling as early as possible for as much as he can get out of them.
What is also interesting, and I don't know whether this would be relevant in any sort of mitigating argument, but nobody really noticed this at the time. It didn't really come out until about a year down the line.
Absolutely true, Ian. We know that Donald Trump had people in London in October, November last year, and yet none of them raised a complaint with the BBC or anyone else. Hey, our man has been terribly defamed.
Yeah.
It didn't occur to anyone that this was an issue until the Daily Telegraph in England reported it a few weeks ago.
So finally, Ian, what is your... I mean, would you take a punt on this if I'm going to nip down to the bookmakers this evening and put a bet on Trump wins, Trump loses, BBC versus president? Who comes out victorious?
Normally in litigation, the rule of thumb is that plaintiffs, claimants, normally win. The question here is, will he win the settlement, or will the BBC have the nerve, hold their nerve, and use the best lawyers they can find in the States at huge cost to defend this and say, we're not liable. Not every mistake is defamatory. That's their mantra.
Yeah.
And in this case, it's you know, I once heard someone, when asked this sort of question, say, you could toss a coin, it's more reliable.
Or I'll try AI in the meantime, shall I, Ian? Because that seems to be the direction of travel. Listen, Ian, thank you for your time. Really appreciate that. Ian Bloom, media law consultant. I mean, there is no doubt that, I mean, in literal terms, that clip on its own defames Donald Trump, and it creates a false narrative. And again, I didn't see the programme at the time, and I thought I was quick off the mark, because as soon as this story broke a few months ago now, I thought, what, is it still on iPlayer? Well, of course, it was never going to be there. They're not, even the BBC aren't that stupid. And it had disappeared. So I've been on there. I'm sure someone's got a version of it somewhere, I'm sure. If you watch the whole thing, then it makes more sense, because they set out the arguments as the programme goes on, and then you see this montage, which is reflective of what they already talked about. That's kind of largely, I think, the argument. But it's not really an argument, because it still resulted in the edit. I mean, I just, you know, having sat in God knows how many recording booths and, you know, for voices and editing and God knows what, for so many years, and knowing how you know, when you're editing an interview, and I've sat there as the presenter, and there's a producer or an editor going, you say, well, we'll lose that bit because he says a better line afterwards, so you can do that kind of stuff. The idea that you would kind of flip around the words so that they made a complete sentence, but were said, in the case of Trump, an hour apart, almost. I mean, I can't imagine. I just seriously cannot imagine any point where you would do that. And even if you did, one person at the very least would go, I don't think that's right, mate. And because it's Panorama didn't make the programme, as I understand it, but the BBC did edit it. Someone somewhere, there'd be more than one person there, somebody somewhere would have, you know, I would have thought flagged it. I think somebody did suggest it. Where did it go next? How many people did it go to? And were those people, or if those people were not aware of that, they might not have checked that bit, because the last thing in the world they would have thought would be that a Panorama editor would have done that. But an editor would have probably done it under the direction of a director or a producer. So there's definitely a story there to come out, and that to me is fascinating, partly because I do this for a living. It doesn't let anybody off the hook, by the way. And if this was a chronic act of naivety, and they genuinely thought they were doing nothing wrong because it was still representative of what was said, then you really have no place in my industry. You should not be working in radio or television if you thought that was acceptable. And of course, we live in a world where people do take sound bites from programmes like they've never done before. And that was the classic soundbite from the programme. Let's go to Matthew in Cheshire. Back to issues around Bondi Beach, Matthew. What are your thoughts? Good afternoon.
Hiya. I'm just doing school runs with you, a bit of background noise.
All right.
I apologise.
No, not a problem.
I can't get my head around it, because in the Blair and Brown years, there was no anti-Semitism. You didn't know anything about it, and all of a sudden, all this has come up and raised its head about the Jewish people. I grew up with, a lot of sympathy towards the Jews for what happened in the Second World War. My wife works in an office, and it's prominently Indian Muslims that work in there. And when the Manchester atrocity happened, one of them actually stood up, and you wouldn't think of it, went, kill them all. And I was like, imagine you saying something like that in your staff room. You'd be in front of HR and...
What, kill them all? Who was he referring to? The terrorists?
The Jews. No, the Jews. Oh, she was referring, like, it was a good thing.
Oh, the synagogue attack, you mean?
Yeah.
Sorry, mate.
Said, kill them all. And they all sort of like went, yeah. And this is just moderate Muslims. And you think...
Well, no, you'd be up in front of HR, you would never keep your job after that.
No, you wouldn't. And it was just completely just like, well, yeah, okay. And I was like, my wife was mortified, I was mortified, but you wouldn't dream of saying such a thing. And it's scary, but, you think of it, the most popular name for the little boys this year was Mohammed. So it's just going to get bigger and bigger. So what do you do to stop it? How do we re-educate these people that we're all equal, we all live in the same island, and we all should respect each other's religions and faiths.
I know, and even having the conversation, it's sometimes a bit uncomfortable, isn't it, Matthew? You know what I mean? Sometimes you think, I've got to sort of give it a caveat or an apology, by saying, it's not everybody. We all know it's not everybody. The idea that every Muslim is a terrorist or a terrorist sympathiser is clearly BS. No, we all know that. But I think the picture is actually more nuanced than that. And so while you've got people at one end who are willing to do what they did at the Manchester Arena or Bondi Beach or London Bridge or 7-7, you've got those people. There'll be people connected to those people that would have been aware of the extremities of these people. Now, as it turns out, I think it was family members, both on 7-7 and the 21st of July, that ultimately assisted in working out who was responsible. But there are people who have sympathies, and this happens across the board, I get it, but it's that we've got to root out. Like reference the guy you've just said about the workplace.
Yeah, but they don't speak again. It's like you keep saying, we're not hearing anyone from the mosques coming on going, this is unacceptable. They don't say it. It's a closed shop. It's the same with the rape gangs. It's, if this was a Catholic priest that said something, they all come out and say, no, this is it's not. We've got a government that will not condemn what's going on. And if the government won't condemn it, you're just basically saying, crack on, you just carry on doing what you're doing, because we'll just tiptoe around you.
Yeah, spot on. Matthew, thank you. That's the problem. There's no condemnation from the government. There's no real robust... if you think about what's just happened in Australia, and we, in this country, are entitled to opine quite a lot on this because we've had it ourselves and threats still remain, then that's when you want to hear your Prime Minister stand up and get really bloody angry, isn't it? And you want to hear Starmer firing it off from the dispatch box or outside number 10, convening a press conference, saying, look, I've just seen what's happened. You can't just offer our sympathies and shoulder to shoulder, light a candle and sing Kumbaya and then talk about diversity as our strength. Get angry, mate. Get really angry. Pinpoint the specific problem. But they've all been scared witless to do that, of course, because they don't want to tamper with anything. Just briefly, on the BBC... Justina and Francis both make a similar point. Justina says, this is reference to the Panorama edit, there were reports of a similar issue on a Newsnight programme, so even if you could get away with it once as a mistake, I don't see how you could get away with it twice. Yeah, now, of course, the BBC is massive, so the chances are the people doing the Panorama programme probably didn't remember or had no idea about the Newsnight programme. But yes, it did happen. And actually, their American guest, who wasn't a Trump fan, called it out live on air when it happened. It was a pretty similar thing where they put two bits together and created, I mean, maybe it turns out it is the same editor or same producer or whatever. But yes, they had got form, and Francis makes a similar point to that as well. 0344 499 1000. the Talk app. You can watch, catch up and listen to all your favourite shows and podcasts anytime, anywhere, all on the Talk app. Watching and listening to Talk just got easier. There's now only one place for the home of common sense. So head over to your App Store or Google Play and search Talk now.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Don't go away, Dan, with you in just a second. Let's just do the voice of doom. This is the mystery voice. Just before the news at 3, we played you this voice.
Going to be community relations.
Very simple question. Who is it? These are some of the guesses. Janet Fuchs. You sure? Liz Truss, no. Daisy Cooper, no. Laura Trott, it is not. Joe Swinson, Naz Shah, Hazel Blears, no. Dawn Primarolo. Dawn Primarolo. I think she was a Lib Dem MP. I think. No. Lucy Powell, no. Katie Lamb, no. We haven't got a winner. Nobody got it right. Oh, she was Labour, Dawn Primarolo. I do remember she was quite a tall woman, I seem to remember. No one got it right. It's back tomorrow around about the same time. Dawn Primarolo. I'm just going to say that all day now. Randomly in the kitchen tonight while cooking. Dan is in Liverpool on diversity. Dan, what have you got for us? Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Ian. I don't know if it's just me, but I feel like I've just become numb to the whole thing right now.
Yeah.
And we're just waiting. When's the next thing going to happen? Is it going to be during the Christmas market or something? And I'm saying this as someone who's mixed race, or as some people will say, other, mug-blood, mongrel. I don't know, like, do I even belong in England anymore, according to some people's views and people like me? But the problem is, all these left-wing individuals who keep saying diversity is our strength, yeah, diversity can work. If you've got a building site, you don't want to just hire a load of bricklayers. You need people to do other jobs as well. But the way we're going right now,
but it's diversity of talent, isn't it? That, you know, a nation should be built on talent. So I said at the beginning of the programme, you know, if you look at this country, we've got, you know, Nigerian doctors and Indian entrepreneurs, Polish architects, Chinese tech geniuses, and all of that is fantastic. And the strength is that we've employed brilliant people, not because they're a different colour or a different ethnicity.
No, they're not. My dad's an Iranian doctor. My grandfather and my dad's family immigrated here legally when the Shah went out of power.
Yeah.
They had to, otherwise they would have been hung, unfortunately.
Well, of course, yeah. I mean, but their talents are... It's brilliant. Their diversity, or their strength, rather, is in their talents, isn't it? It's not because they're a bit browner than I am.
No, and the problem is, so, I don't know, you're older than me, you're going to be wiser than me. I'm 32 years old.
I'm 31.
I'm 31.
Not that funny. Go on.
Sorry, you've got me a giggle in there.
That's all right, made me giggle.
In my years, like, I feel like racism almost died. We were living in an area where Martin Luther King's words, I want to be judged by my actions, not by the colour of my skin, were almost happening. And I feel like since I can almost date it to 2016, and I'm not blaming Trump for it, but I feel like the left and people in the left-wing media, BBC, LBC, and people like them, tried so hard to dismiss him and to stay up racism that they brought those embers back to life. And we're living in a world where, I don't know, I've seen people now talking, and it feels like the pendulum's starting to swing so far the other way.
It's weird, isn't it? Although I suppose social media as well, Dan, is a massive accelerator and sometimes an exaggerator of a problem. You know, if you look at, you're right, when we had those Black Lives Matter protests in this country, it's like, you know, why are we having them here? You know, we got rid of this stuff years ago, surely. You know, and now people were publicly on the streets talking about how this country is like South Africa in 1978, or, you know, somewhere in the deep south of the United States in 1968. I mean, that's how it felt.
It doesn't help when you get people like Dr. Shola. I'm pretty sure you know who she is, don't you?
Indeed, yeah.
It feels like people like her are standing up and bringing people more racist than they would have been. And I don't know how many comments you've probably heard where someone says they don't care they're called racist anymore. They're just so fed up. And that's
do you know what? Here's the funny thing. You know, and I hate it when this happens. It happens to everybody to a degree. I did a TV show here with her once. Mm-hmm. And do you know the most annoying thing about her, Dan?
That she doesn't let anyone have an opinion?
No. She was the nicest woman I think I've ever met. She was so lovely, it was ridiculous. And I thought, hang on, I'm meant to be having a row with you, mate. And she was so nice. And this happens so often. I've got a friend of mine who's an absolute, you know, to say he's a left-winger is, understates it. Couldn't get more left. And he got to know Nigel Farage quite recently. And his biggest disappointment was that Farage was quite a nice bloke and he can't get his head around it. But that always happens. But you're right, when the whole kind of racism narrative, I wouldn't say disappeared, because racism is never going to disappear like any other form of criminality is never going to fully disappear. But when it appeared we were on the right track, and football and the red card campaign and kick it out campaign, all of that. And then suddenly it was back, but it was mostly back through social media. And I think some of those voices, like the Sholas of this world, kind of pounced on that and thought, hey, there you go, I've now got a new purpose in life.
Can I just say, the people on the left, and with Dr. Shola, I do believe, as she said, she's a nice person, but I think, unfortunately, there's an old saying, the road to hell is paved with good intentions, and I'll leave it at that.
Yeah, fair point as well. Dan, thank you very much indeed for that. Dan in Liverpool. It was the kind of taking the knee thing, because, a terrible situation with the guy in the States who was killed while a knee from a cop was on his neck. And I know there's lots of, people even depart from that. But the guy went to jail, Derek Chauvin, I think his name was. And that caused a set of protests and requirements for people to take the knee, to get down on your knee as a result of something that happened in another country thousands of miles away. And by the way, the cop was never ever nabbed for racism. It was never a racist attack. I mean, people can say that that's what they think it was, but that wasn't the criminal argument against the officer. I mean, it's unbelievable that we suddenly sort of, within no time at all, I remember, I think it was the Daily Mail that interviewed two young black girls. They're about 17, 18, said, oh, we don't want to go out at night because you don't know when the police are going to kill you. It's like, really? You suddenly came out with that? You don't know whether the police are going to kill you? But you live in Lincolnshire, for goodness sake. I don't think there's a single case of the police killing anyone. 0344 499 1000. This is Talk.
Across the UK. On DAB+. On YouTube. On your mobile. And on your side. This is Talk.
We'll come back to more of your comments. We've got stuff on the BBC here as well. Lots of comment on the BBC and what is going on with Donald Trump, who's going to sue them for 10 billion quid. Spoiler alert, that's a lot of money. $10 billion, still a lot of money. Now, the government reforms will pay dentists more to treat urgent cases, while a report urges £150 annual dental vouchers to end the postcode lottery. Policy Exchange, the think tank, backed by Sir Sajid Javid, former Health Secretary, of course, says the plan could save the NHS dentistry and fix our national smile. What a nice thought. Let's speak to Dr. Eddie Crouch, chair of the British Dental Association, a man who already has a national smile. Good afternoon to you, Eddie.
Good afternoon, Ian.
Nice
How are you?
Yeah, good as gold at this end. Nice to have you with us. So, I mean, obviously there's a lot of focus on medicine at the moment, but mostly around doctors for all the wrong reasons, perhaps. So this is a story about teeth and dentists. So it's nice to depart and get some focus on this. Just tell us, give us an overview, Eddie, if you could, sir. What is it that's being proposed here? Where's the problem and what is this proposed solution?
Okay, so the situation is that in England alone, about 14 million people are looking for access to an NHS dentist and can't get one at the moment. What this government proposal is to restructure the way that dentists are paid. There's no more money being inputted by the government, but they're being asked, or they're asking dentists to prioritise people who they believe have the highest need for our services, including people with multiple decayed teeth, people with advanced gum disease, people who are doing DIY dentistry. So the budget is being refocused to incentivize dentists to take those patients on. And the reason that they're needing to do this is many of those patients that we treat in our practices for hours and hours and hours, at the end of that period of treatment, we've ended up paying for their treatment rather than made any profit out of it. And as a business, we really can't survive on that.
Are we still chronically short of dentists? I mean, you know, often people, you know, you can get people having a conversation in a pub, so I can't find an NHS dentist for love nor money. And pretty much everyone I seem to know has found themselves having to seek a private dentist. There's loads of those guys around.
Yeah, I mean, the numbers of dentists on the dental register are at quite a high level, somewhere around 45,000 dentists on the General Dental Council register, and we've got probably around 10,000 full-time equivalent of those doing NHS dentistry. And sadly, on a weekly basis, we've got more and more of my colleagues either reducing the amount of NHS dentistry that they're doing or leaving NHS dentistry altogether. You know, you talked about other areas of the health service. Doctors are going on strike, but when they finish the strike, they come back. If a dentist leaves the NHS, he rarely comes back, or she rarely comes back to work in that system again.
Yeah. So we need more dentists, that's for sure. It was always one of those areas of our healthcare that, perhaps in our minds, when I was a kid, you know, there was only NHS dentists, and that's who you went to see, and we can all remember our dentist, and you remember what the waiting room looked like, and you have this kind of notion. But that is obviously long gone, and you know, we now have this inclusion of the private sector as well. I'm sure that does take up some of the slack, but what's the direction of travel looking like, Eddie, in terms of that ratio between state and private?
You know, I think Stephen Kinnock is a fairly reasonable person to do business with. I think his ambitions for NHS dentistry are good. The problem he's got is he's trying to get money out of the Treasury, and not a single penny from the NHS spending review was actually directed to dentistry. So he's up against a very hard place. And therefore we have to have an honest conversation really about, if you're going to spend this amount of money on public service dentistry, who are the people you want the dental profession to actually see? And that may be, sadly, the people who are who can afford it will have to seek their treatment outside of the NHS service. That's not exactly what we would want at the British Dental Association. We'd want adequate funding, and I don't think in the real terms of money spent in the NHS, it would take an awful lot of money to actually make dentistry significantly more, but it's pretty unlikely at the moment that that's going to happen.
Indeed. Listen, on that point, great to have you on with us, Eddie. Thank you, Dr. Eddie Crouch, Chair of the British Dental Association. Thank you to him. Thoughts on that? The DIY dentistry bit, I always find... Apparently you can buy online some, like, filling stuff, can't you? Like, not from a moody website, you know, run by Fingers McDougall, who's got an iffy dentistry empire running, but genuine stuff. And so some people resort to that, but pulling your own gnashers out, I mean, that's a whole different ballgame, isn't it? Simon says, reference the BBC, Ian, it's not a mistake if you deliberately manipulate editing to completely change the footage. It deserves to lose its licence fee funding and made to take its chances, along with every other broadcaster. That's a good point. Ultimately, that might be the answer. If this was the work of an individual or an individual team, would that be enough to write the whole BBC has got to come tumbling down because of an editor? Will that editor say, this was not done in malice, it was done deliberately, but it wasn't done to create another narrative, it was just a compilation of things Trump had said? I struggle with that defence because it's a compilation that changes, that forms a complete sentence. So when you hear the Trump edited version, it sounds like a complete sentence. I can't get my head around this. I'm going to keep saying it. I want to know how that specifically happened. And surely we should be entitled to know what action was taken against... I mean, we know that the chief, Director General resigned, head of news resigned. But what about the people that literally did this? Because with respect to Tim Davie, former head honcho, love him or hate him, he didn't do the edit. He wouldn't have known about the edit. And if you've got a team working on Panorama, the smart money says you've got the best, right? You've got the best of the best there. So people who are not just physical editors, they're journalistically minded. They know the rules and the regs. They know how to construct a narrative. They know how to put a programme together. They know all of that stuff. Who were those people? Have any of those people walked the plank? Robert is in Hertfordshire. On doctors, Robert, what have you got for us? Hi.
Yeah, hi. Yeah, listen, we've got a problem here with the left, which has infected everything, the fibre of this country. They've infected the NHS, they've infected the universities, I've said this before, they've infected the unions. This is a cancer, and nothing will happen until we stamp it out. Forget about West Street, and he's not going to stand up to them. He's not going to stand up to him.
There's not much he can do, is there, really?
Just give him the money.
Yeah. Just give him the money.
And then see what happens.
And then what? So give him the money?
Yeah, give him the money.
And then what do we do when they ask for more?
Well, I'll tell you what we do. We give them. Listen, I'm not supporting them by saying this. I'm saying give them the money and save a few lives, and then we'll worry about that tomorrow.
I mean, they've already got one big pay rise, of course.
Yeah, but it's not that. I mean, you've only got to look at them standing on their picket lines. And these ain't normal people. Green hair and nose. These are not. They've never brought a family up. They've never gone through what me and you have gone through. These are not normal people. Listen, we've got.
I don't want to see a doctor with green hair. Do you?
No, but all right. In all
like being treated like by a muppet, wouldn't it? I don't want that to be the case.
Well, yeah, but it starts early. It starts in medical school. It starts in, and it's starting in our own schools. This ideology of left wing, all they want to do is bring the country down, and they are. They're bringing the country down.
But why do they want to do that? They've got a Labour government in power. Labour is, the party that's meant to understand the concerns, whereas the Tories are meant to, hate anything like, doctors and public sector workers. Not true, by the way, but that's the kind of myth.
Because they're Marxists. These people are Marxists.
Is it the doctors or is it the BMA?
Well, yeah, they're all Marxists. It all goes... I've got a conspiracy theory, and I feel that it's the Fabian Society and Marxists, which is, you know what, mate? It doesn't make me laugh, but these militant Muslims think they're going in cahoots. These left-wingers think they're in cahoots with the militant Muslims, not militant Islam. No, they're not. They're just using them. You know, we're in dangerous times. Let me ask you something.
Yeah.
That all of a sudden, coming from nowhere, we're going to be at war soon. How many Muslim migrants are going to sign up then?
Well, they're not allowed to work, are they?
Well, no, that's not working.
They'd have to change the rules on that. You have to join the army first, of course. I don't think we're going to. Do you think we're going to be at war, Robert? Do you think we're going to be at war?
Robert,
do you think that we're going to be at war?
That's another question. I wouldn't let any of my sons go or grandsons. I wouldn't go myself, and that's a terrible thing to say. That's a terrible, terrible thing to say. But you know,
well, it's not, because I think a lot of people now feel the same, because we've seen from past experience in modern times the futility of what, you know, people understood World War I and World War II. When you look at the Iraq War and what happened there and various other incursions where we've had to support things, we've sort of lost that trust with our political leaders and with the system, and now you're sending young people into battle to fight. No, I get it, but to fight for a cause that, you know, doesn't feel like something we should be at war over. We should be at war over.
No, there's a big difference. Listen, in World War I and World War II, we knew where the enemy was. It was across the water. The enemy is already here. It's already here. We're banging trouble, Ian. I'm telling you. And, you know, we're banging trouble, and we need a different government. We need a strong government. I really don't know what's going to happen, but I'm frightened. And I'm not usually the type of person to be frightened. Yeah. But it starts with getting rid of this left-wing mob. You know, no more waving flags about down Trafalgar Square. That all stops now.
Yeah. Well, you'd think, you know, we don't have a government, and we haven't had one for a long, long time, that is particularly robust and outspoken and angry about certain issues that need addressing. Robert, thank you very much indeed for that. Robert in Hertfordshire. Leslie says BBC isn't broadcasting in Florida, America, so how does Trump even have a case? I think is the argument something that some Floridians were able to access that programme? Is that the basis of it? Because you'd think there would be no case, but I think that would have been raised already. Sharon says, as far as I'm concerned, they can shove diversity where the sun doesn't shine. I am and will continue to use the words I want to use, and if it offends anyone, tough. I'm fed up with pussyfooting around other religions, and I'm defining myself as a tree people. For goodness sake, I can't even go into Tesco and ask for the faggots. This is, you can, just don't laugh when you do it. This is Britain, and if you don't like it here, go to the country where your faith is practiced. Yeah, no, I hear it. I hear what you're saying, Sharon, and there is an irredeemable reality. I haven't had a faggot for a long time, I have to say. They're funny old bits of kit, aren't they? It's just a meat. What's the difference between a meatball and a faggot? I'd like to know. When was the last time you went faggot bound, Finn? Finn's never had a faggot. Amy, you must have had a faggot. Amy's dad used to... Yeah, again, it's another older person reference from Amy. Yeah. There used to be a company called Brains Faggots. Seriously, a food company called Brains. Do they still exist? They do still exist. Luke is telling me they do still exist. They're very successful. I just thought in terms of marketing, calling yourself Brains, oh, it's Mr. Brains now. That gives it a little bit more of a Mr. Brains 6 pork faggots. So there you go. So they are still available. Mr. Brains gives it a little bit more of a, I don't know, a sort of a credibility maybe. Because Mr. Brain, you know, that's something. You just call it Brains fag. You just tend to think it's made of brains. Their ones aren't. I'm sure some are, though. 0344 499 1000. Our lines are open. This is Talk. the Talk app. You can watch, catch up and listen to all your favourite shows and podcasts anytime, anywhere, all on the Talk app. Watching and listening to Talk just got easier. There's now only one place for the home of common sense. So head over to your App Store or Google Play and search Talk now.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Apparently your faggot is offal-based, as distinct from a meatball, which is meat-based. Like one's the real deal and one's something not quite as good. Unless, of course, you're a massive fan of offal, then that might be a completely different scenario for you. Chris says, I want Trump to win and destroy the BBC and make them sort out and have pay-per-view. I think did we read that one a little? I always do that every day. There's at least one I read twice. And I'm always more than happy to reiterate a point if it's a good one, and it was. I think so many people feel that way about the BBC. And the BBC at the moment seems to have almost zero intention of recalibrating. And each time they say, well, we'll learn from this. And, you know, the problem is it's so big that there's not a committee that sits there. You know, there's a shed load of right-wingers as well as left-wingers that work in the BBC. I get all of that. I understand those arguments. But there's no... You know, so something happens on BBC Sussex or something, and it's an editorial error. You know, for example, I should say BBC Sussex would never make such an error, but for example, and then of course that's the whole. We then talk about the BBC rather than a journalist at one place in one particular area at a single moment in time that might have got something wrong. It's illuminated because it's the BBC, and rightly so in many respects. But it's not an It's not always an orchestrated. You know, right? Here's the rule book. Here's the public rule book, kids. This is the secret BBC one. You know, it's not that, but it should be held to a higher standard. And when you get issues like Panorama, then you're in the sort of Premier League of analysis, and rightly so. People should be hauled over the coals. I still want more information on how that happened, and we haven't got it. Glenn is over here in Milton Keynes on Trump and the BBC. What are you making of it, Glenn? Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Mr. Collins. How are you?
Very well, thanks. Yeah, what are your thoughts?
Well, I can understand. Everybody's talking about if Trump sues the BBC, obviously it's the taxpayers have got to pay whatever happens, yes?
Yep.
Why doesn't Trump sue the production company, the journalists, the editors who put it together to make him look black? You know, I mean, why don't he sue them? Because
make him look black.
Well, you know, make him look an evil piece of work. You know what I mean?
But what, by editing this piece that they did?
Yeah, by editing, because
yes.
All this about it was an accident. That was no way. You know, that was no accident. You know what I mean? That was deliberately done to, you know, to say this isn't a very nice person.
But it's such a. But what I don't get about it, Glenn, is the person that put their. Apparently, if you watch the whole programme, it's not as bad as when you hear the isolated clip. This is what I haven't seen it, so I haven't got a clue. Doesn't excuse it at all. But the person that did it is probably never going to work again in television. So, or shouldn't work again in television. So you take a hell of a risk by doing that deliberately.
But do you believe that? Do you believe the people who've done it? I mean, there must be loads of people involved with their fingers in the pie there. Do you believe that? I mean, imagine if that was a policeman doing some dodgy bit of work like that. They'll be sacked. Their pension will be taken away from them.
But you're making Panorama, so your credibility as an editor or a producer rests on this.
Yeah, but you're telling me how woke the BBC, that bloke will probably be sidelined for a couple of years and get another little cushy little job.
Well, maybe, but I mean, he could easily be a Reform UK voter.
It could be, I doubt it, but you doubt it very much. But why doesn't Trump go after them, you know what I mean?
I get it. Listen, Glenn, thank you for that. Well, the BBC are the publishers of the work, hence the reason why. Thank you to Matt in Shrewsbury. Faggots are awful. Good point. Mo says, when we were little, me and my brother used to call them brains frozen grandmas. Was that because your grandma gave them to you? I don't know. Peter Cargwell's here. We're talking about the demise of the faggot, Peter.
Right.
Which is a... Sorry? Which is which is, frankly, a culinary crime. Because these things were staples back in the day. I don't think I've ever had one.
Well, you've never had a faggot?
I don't think so.
I don't think I have either, actually.
It's I mean, you know, it's a meatball, essentially.
Yes.
But one's meat and one's offal. And offal is obviously it's all the guts, isn't it?
Yeah, it's sort of stomach, cow stomach, I think.
But it's obviously all right, because they sell it. And there's a very well-known brand called Mr. Brains... What's it called, Finn? Mr. Brains... something faggots. Mr. Brains 6 pork faggots.
There we are. I'm sure they're awfully good.
That was awful. That was awful.
Dear me.
This could go on.
Yes.
Anyway, aside from our culinary section, which we're doing every day, by the way. Oh, yes. Wait till we get into kumquats tomorrow. Aside from all of that, what have you got coming up?
Well, we're continuing the debate on Donald Trump suing the BBC for $10 billion, and also whether adverts and subscriptions in the BBC could subsidise the licence fee. These horrendous, horrible people in Oxford who say, long live the Intifada, hours after the Bondi attack. I mean, what do they think they're actually talking about? We'll talk about the Liverpool parade attacker getting 21 years and 6 months in prison, and rightly so.